Your peace isn't found in chasing, it's in being. Wayne Dyer shares a profound truth in this radio show. Contentment isn't something you earn, achieve, or buy. It's something you decide. If you're always waiting for life to go your way before you feel peace, you'll never actually experience it. In this conversation, he speaks about swimming with sea turtles and how they embody the lesson of being at home wherever they are, just like we should be. He challenges the idea that struggle is unfair, instead urging us to see obstacles as part of the greater plan shaping us. He reminds us that life is a balance of joy and pain, and only by embracing both can we truly know either. The world will always be full of things trying to pull you into stress, doubt, and fear. But your job isn't to control the world, it's to master your inner state. Special thanks to Hay House for partnering with me to release this content exclusively here on my YouTube channel. And if you make it all the way to the end of this video, leave a hashtag Believe in the comments below so I can celebrate you in a future video. Believe.
Dr. Wayne Dyer joins us from his office in Maui. And how are you, Dr. Dyer? Hope you had a good weekend.
I did. I had a wonderful weekend. I had a great experience with my turtles. I've been really into my turtles lately.
I didn't know you had turtles.
Well, no, the ocean does.
Oh, okay.
Great big sea turtles. And I've discovered that they come to a certain place over on Kaanapali Beach on Maui. The turtles are vegetarians. They come down and they feed off of this big place called Black Rock. And the moss apparently grows there overnight, and they come every day about a certain time. And yesterday there were 4 of them, 4 huge turtles that I was in the middle of them, and we were swimming around in a circle, and it was just one of the most magical moments I've ever had in my life. And one of them, I mean, you could see them actually chewing their moss or whatever, and looking me right smack in the eye, swimming right at you. Now these things are as big as a big coffee table, So, and the Native Americans always said that a turtle is the most spiritual animal that there is, because everywhere it goes, it always takes its home with it. It's always at home, no matter where it goes. It's never afraid to be, away from home, because home is where it lives, since it carries its shell around and just can go into its home at any time. And it was like a lesson we all need to learn, be at home, be in paradise wherever you are, as Aristotle said.
They're beautiful animals. I love them.
Yeah, they really are. And and sometimes they really, they sort of connect. I just feel connected to them. I see the same one because it's got a separate marking on him. I've seen him now 3 days in a row. And it's almost like they recognize me. Because a lot of times the tourists will be out there, and they're out there, doing their little dance, trying to follow these turtles around when they're snorkeling. But I don't do that. I just let them be, and then I just swim, and they just seem to swim right along with me. And this time there were 4 of them, and we just swam in a circle. For over 20 minutes, we swam in a circle. It was like a love circle. It was a very beautiful experience. So I'm looking forward to that. I now know what time they come to feed. They come to feed around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So that's when I'm going to do my swim today.
I don't know if it's true there in Hawaii, but I know in Florida, in Fort Lauderdale in the spring, I know they come up and lay their eggs.
Oh, yeah, they do. Yeah, these are different kind of turtles. But I lived in Fort Lauderdale for many, many years, and I still have a home there. And you would see them. They would come up and they would lay their eggs at night, and then of course you wait a couple of months, and then it's all done by the moon. It's just such an amazing thing how this whole Earth is, everything in it is connected. And they actually had to put blockages out there because the turtles are guided towards the little baby turtles. There'll be hundreds of them will come out. And they'll be guided toward the ocean by the light of the moon. It's all that whole thing is all choreographed by some great intelligence that has way beyond me to be able to understand it. But then there were traffic lights that would be there, or street lights, and the street lights would actually confuse the turtles, and they would start heading towards the street lights, and you would see them being, cars smashing into all these little baby turtles in the morning. So they had to put protections out there. Yeah.
That's a great lesson for today, kind of a metaphor we can maybe think about. Be at home where you are. I like that.
Wherever you are, right. Yeah, paradise is wherever I am. And I'm wondering about all the people all over the country. I know we have a lot of people on Hay House Radio in Europe, and of course the volcanic eruption in Iceland. I think it's airplane karma. I'm just going to throw this out there. I think that now they've started announcing that they want to start charging for carry-on bags on top, so that anything that you bring on. Next, it'll be if you wear shoes, and if you, if you wear a bracelet, or, whatever it is that they're doing. They're just looking for any number of ways to start to So they're losing $200 million a day because of this volcanic ash. And I think the volcano gods are just mad at the airlines and saying, look, will you just charge people what it costs and stop nickel and diming them to death and start acting like you respect your customers instead of charging them for every little tiny thing. And, you get to the
that's an
airport.
Interesting theory.
Airport karma, I think that's what it is, and that thing's going to keep exploding until the airlines get it. These are customers. Treat them with decency. Treat them with respect. Don't try to nickel and dime them for every little thing they do. I think that the next thing that's going to happen is going to happen to the banks, and it's going to happen to the credit card companies, and so ultimately we all start living together and saying, look, we're not here to rip each other off and see what we can do to get as much as we possibly can from everybody else. We're here to serve each other and to be decent to each other. Anyway, so that's airplane karma. So if you don't stop at airlines, those Icelandic things are just the beginning. Right.
Yeah, I like that theory. That's an interesting theory. Let's see what happens.
Right.
So we've got callers lining up. We still have a few open lines left if you want to join the show today. Things are filling up, though. Dr. Dyer will be taking your calls. So let's start with Barton in Las Vegas on line 1.
Hi.
Hi. Welcome to the show.
Hello. I just want to tell you, my life is awesome, and everything that
well, that's
you did.
Good.
I know everything that you did. I mean, it's not just your books. It's like tell all your listeners connected to the world and to the earth, and it's wonderful. One thing about me is like, I thanked you before, but I just want to thank you. That's all I'm doing right now is thanking you again. I got the shift. It was wonderful, and I love you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I love you, too.
But I found out about myself my daughter was diagnosed with autism, with Fragile X. And it seems it comes from me, too, as well. My husband, her father does not have it, but I do have it. And it's wonderful because it's a gift because I'm creative. I'm a muralist. I do my businesses. I'm holding 2 houses down. And I had a really hardship last year. It was really, 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 really hard last year. And everything has come back to plan. And I have 2 bunnies and I have 2 dogs. And I have a beautiful little house that's 1950s style in Las Vegas, Nevada. And on Saturdays, when I'm starting, is a free little art class for children with Crayola crayons, just for the heck of it, just to give to the community. Neat? And I just wanted to tell you, you're wonderful.
Well, thank you. I feel wonderful today. How is your daughter doing?
She's doing awesome. She's doing really good. She's in Minnesota right now. She's doing 2 jobs. She's 22, and she's going to be coming back out to California probably in June for a couple of weeks with her stepmom. And her stepmom and I are deciding to write a book about my life and Sasha's life and her life and how we all kind of combined together, because I thought I was an alcoholic. I thought I was, and it wasn't that. It wasn't that at all. And it just the realization that this is who I am today. And my little girl came out, and everybody has to have their little girl. Their little person has to come out to play. You can have your serious side and pay your bills and do all of that, but you have to have your little child come out and play and have a good time. And I just want to thank you, Wayne, because I've always thought you're wonderful.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you, and I appreciate your call very much. Good way to start this Monday morning. God bless you.
Good.
Thanks for calling in. It's nice to get a call that just says thank you, and that I'm happy and that things are going well.
It's nice to hear that occasionally.
Yes, it is.
And it sounds like Barton's kind of figured out what you were talking about earlier with the turtles, be at home where you are. It seems like she's created a little situation for herself there in Las Vegas and is very happy.
Yeah, I think that's really one of the great essences of everything that it means to be enlightened, or to live a life of, to recognize that we're here to just be. There's no rules laid down for us. There's nothing that we have to accomplish. There's no one that we have to impress. We don't have to accumulate more stuff than everybody else has. We don't have to win anything. And that idea of being able to live a life of contentment and to like whatever comes along, whatever happens. When I've just been through sort of an emotional thing with something going on in my life with people that I care about and so on. And I think about the exhilaration and the joy when things are going your way. But the exhilaration and the joy isn't something that you can experience and that you can really know unless you have the opposite, because you don't have anything to contrast it to. And contrast is how we know things. I mean, we wouldn't have a concept of up if we didn't have a concept called down. We wouldn't have a concept of rich if we didn't have one of poor. And we certainly wouldn't have even a concept of life if we didn't have one of death. And so we need both of those extremes in the physical world. I think that one of the great things that we learn as we become more and more enlightened and as we leave our bodies and enter into the next dimension is that, we'll move into a place where there are no dichotomies, where there are no separations, there are no splits. But here in this physical world, there's always that division. And if you can just be in the times when sadness is there, it's like so many calls that we hear, Diane, on this show are about, I'm not getting it. I don't have enough money and not enough stuff is coming in and not, and there's too much shortage and I've got too much lack and I don't know if I'm going to make it through this recession and on and on and on. And you can never really know contentment if you're only going to be content when things are going the way you want them to go. You have to be able to be content when things aren't going as you would like them to go, and to recognize that the sadness that you experience in your life is there to help you to understand what great joy is. And without both of them, you can't have either one of them, if that makes any sense.
No, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think I've learned more from the situations that I've hated in my life than the situations that I've loved. There's always been some kind of lesson there that I can take away with that. So it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think about it even as being a little boy and living in an orphanage and having no parents around me, and now the role that I have in my life as parent and as someone who has accumulated a great deal of, material things, material wealth and so on. I always feel that that absence of it is what has allowed me to appreciate the presence of it and has also allowed me to just not be attached to it. Either way, it's okay. Content. My crown is called content.
Yeah, I love that.
The crown it is that seldom kings enjoy.
And looks like Marisol in Texas wants to make a shift into a new career. So let's go to Marisol on line 4. And welcome to the show. You're on with Dr. Dyer.
Thank you so much. Hi, Dr. Dyer.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine. I'm so glad to reach you. Well, this is the thing. I've been here in the United States for quite some months. I left my career. I want to do something else. I want to become a teacher. But there's the thing. All my life in my house, and I've been always having like this kind of money struggle. Every time we acquire, or me, now that I'm by myself, I acquire certain like I can be, a certain amount of money, or that I can see, okay, then I can go for it. Something happens that takes my money away, and I think this is one of my biggest fears, to be incapable of absorb my expenses and stuff to cover my debts or whatever, which I never try to do it. I never go for credit cards. I never do that because I'm so afraid of that.
Right.
But it keeps on going, and I really want to do it, and I really push myself to, like you said, no excuses. If you want something, you have to reach it. But there's always this struggle about, everything is going good, and then suddenly something happens. I get a ticket, I get a bank fee, or something that I was not planning to expect. Something unexpected comes.
Let me ask you something right there in the middle of that. When you get the ticket, or when you get the obstacle for what that seems to be keeping you from where you want to be, are you able to be in a state of gratitude for that and say to yourself that everything that shows up in my life, even the stuff that my ego and the part of me that thinks it shouldn't be happening, even when that is trying to convince me that this is just bad luck, that there's really a reason for it, that that just as much as the good things that show up in our life, that the struggles, the difficulties, the obstacles, the things, if you can be in that place where you can say, okay, I'm listening, I got this ticket, I attracted it into my life, it's going to cost me a little bit more, or whatever it might be. Maybe it was just a bigger lesson was there, which was to slow down, or to, to not be so consumed with all of those things. In other words, as you go through the days of your life and you have one idea about how your life should be going and how your bills should be paid and all of these kind of things, and it's all fine, but there's also something bigger that's moving the chess pieces around in your life that is also saying, but here's something for you to deal with over here, or this doesn't. I'm going to be 70 years old in a few weeks, and it's the lesson that I've really learned in my life is that everything that's happening to me, even when I don't like it, and I'm able to look back on it, like I can look back on so many of the difficulties and hardships and lacks that occurred in my life that I now am totally grateful for them and realize I couldn't be where I am had I not gone through those. And that isn't just for the really big things, it's for all of the little things as well. And that's the state, I guess that's the theme of today's show. That's what the turtles seem to be doing. The turtles, that are out there, they're not consumed with, is there enough moss growing on this rock? There should have been more than here, this wasn't here yesterday, or all of these snorkelers out here, why are they there? They just seem to, they just seem to flow with it and be in that state of allowing that most of us are not in. And I think that when you get to that state of being able to just allow and recognize and more than anything, be grateful for the pain that you're going through or the hardship that you're going through. It doesn't mean that you use that as an excuse and just say, okay, I'm just going to give up and not do anything. But it just sort of allows you to internally align yourself with a universe that says, this is what it is. This is what you have to deal with. Deal with it from a place of peace, and peace will be your reward. I always say that, if you have that wand that says, no matter what it is that's going to come down the pike at me, no matter what it is, I'm going to be able to be at peace. And that's, more than anything, is what I think meditation has taught me. But go on, tell me more.
Well, it's just that I think about what you say of being grateful. Well, exactly at the moment, truly I cannot find any way to feel grateful. I try to learn from that, and I grow from that. I've overcome so many things, but the thing is, like, every time, okay, I'm done with it, this unexpected thing comes, takes me back a little bit. I overcome that, but it keeps on coming. It became a cycle, It became a cycle the last 2 years. I've been reaching my goals little by little, but I still, being some kind of attached there or stuck in there.
But how about having a different goal? What is your name? How do you say your name?
Marisol.
Marisol. How about having a different goal? And that goal is to say, no matter what comes my way, no matter what it is that shows up in my life, I'm going to be in a state of peace about it. I'm not going to judge it. I'm going to just allow. I'm going to be in that state of allowing. It doesn't mean you give up on your, getting yourself to be financially independent and all of the kind of things that you're looking to have, but to get rid of that inner kind of angst and anxiety and upset and almost like judgment about it. I don't know. I just think that there's an energy in the universe that you want to stay connected to, which is one of, all things that are showing up in my life are showing up on time. All obstacles that are showing up are not showing up because I'm being singled out and because, things, that I have to be, I'm being punished for or whatever. Everything that's showing up in my life is presented to me by God. It's given to me by God and by the source, whatever. And I accept that and I stay in that place. And that makes it puts you in a place where it's easier to just move along. And I think if I were to say I have any goals at all, my goals wouldn't have anything to do with more stuff, anything to do with money or anything material. They would be in that quote that I just gave from Shakespeare. I'm going to give it again. I'm loving that quote today. My crown is in my heart, not on my head, nor decked with diamonds nor Indian stones, nor to be seen. My crown is called content. A crown it is that seldom kings enjoy, that very few people ever enjoy, just being in a state of contentment. And when you are, it's like you can handle anything. And that was one of the great lessons that I learned from all of the terrific spiritual teachers that I've had in my life. My teacher Nisargadatta in India once said to me that, once said to all of us, he said that when he was confronted with by a woman who had cancer, and he was trying to tell her to just be at peace and even to be in a state of gratitude for the cancer. And she started to yell at him and tell him that, how can you say such a thing when you're here, you are living in India, but in Pakistan people are fighting and killing each other, and there's war going on all around you, and people are poor, and there's not enough food to eat and all of that. And he just looked at her, and I've never forgotten this. He said, in my world, he said, nothing ever goes wrong. Nothing ever goes wrong. And so his inner world was one of not judging and not saying that it shouldn't be. Whatever it is, I think to myself, if I were in Europe right now and been stuck there for 5 days and there was Icelandic ash blowing all over and I couldn't get back home or whatever it is, all the stories that you see in the paper, I would want to be able to practice a kind of contentment that almost everybody else would be feeling anxiety. And when you get to that state of contentment, you're matching up, you're aligning yourself with the universal energy. So it's really about controlling your imagination and putting the thoughts in your heart that, that don't judge any of it. And then know, if an obstacle comes to the goals that I have, so also is an opportunity going to show up into my life that's going to take me right out of this place that I'm in. I just read a really beautiful little book. I resisted reading it. I just finished it this weekend. It's called The Shack, and there's a lot about that in there. It's really something you might want to look at. Anyway,
okay.
we've got to move along. I really appreciate your call.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your wisdom.
You're welcome. And I recommend that you re-listen to this show, what I just said to you.
Okay.
I think it's really going to be important for you. Much love to you, sweetheart.
And we have 5 minutes left of this segment, so time for another call, hopefully. Let's go to Brian in Orlando. He's calling on line 1. And welcome to the show, Brian. Thanks for calling.
Thank you. How you doing?
Hey, Brian.
Nice to finally talk to you.
Yes.
It's interesting because for years I've had hundreds of conversations with you, and what's funny is there's so many different things I'd love to talk to you about, but there's one thing I just wanted to touch base with you on, at least today, is last week I was talking with someone about the power of intention and what you focus on, you become, and it moves in the direction you want to move into, and your intentions and so forth. Mm-hmm. And she looked at me just trying to contradict me, but also posed a very good question. I just didn't know what to say back to her. She goes, well, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Mm. And I found it fascinating. Uh-huh. And I didn't know how to answer that one back.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of little homilies that are out there that, the meaning behind it is, that just having an intention isn't really enough. And it's sort of what a lot of people really believe, that having good intentions isn't going to get me where I want to be. It's going to end up getting, I'm going to end up in hell unless I take some action, unless I do something. And, I've never liked that slogan. I've never used it. But,
neither have I.
I think that the good intentions are... See, here's the thing, Brian. If you read The Power of Intention, I opened that book with a quote from Carlos Castaneda, who was a great teacher for me in my life, and, especially The Fire from Within and The Power of Silence. Both of those books were just hugely instrumental in my life. And he talks in there about intention. See, most of us think of intention as something that we do. In other words, I've got great intentions, and that intention is something that I'm going to now take action on, and because I intended it, I'm going to make it happen. Castaneda gave me a totally different perspective on that. That's why I remember the day that I decided to write a book about intention was after I had listened to a conversation he had with his teacher down in northern Mexico. His teacher was Don Juan Matus. And Don Juan was telling Carlos, who was in training to become what they call a nagual, his teacher told him was that intention is not something that you do. Intention is a field of energy from which all things in the universe are intended into the world of the physical.
Okay.
In other words, intention is really almost like it's almost like understanding the creative process, how things get created. And Thomas Troward wrote a lot about that, and I quoted him a lot in a lot of my books. He passed away like in 1916.
So it's something that's continuously coming into existence?
Yeah, intention is a field of energy. It's the field of intention. And you, each and every one of us, came out of this field. We like to think that we came into this world because of, our parents commingling, which is hard for us to even imagine.
Yeah, it goes beyond, goes before that. Yeah.
But that tiny little speck that began each and every one of us, that had everything that we needed for this entire physical journey, it had to come from something that wasn't a particle, that wasn't physical. It emanated from, because if you take, quantum physics teaches us, it's the one great lesson of quantum physics, is that particles themselves do not come from particles. That is the same thing that Jesus said. It's the spirit that gives life. So we're talking about spirit. We're talking about something, what Lao Tzu said in the Tao Te Ching, that all being originates in non-being. And so it's trying to understand non-being. If you've read The Shift, the book, I try to talk about that in there. It's a very hard subject to write about. But when you get to that place, then you understand that everything is intended from there. And what you want to do is align with that field. And that's what intention is. It's what I call the 7 phases of intention. I'd reread it. We got to take a break here, Brian. God bless you. Thanks for calling in.
And going right back to the phones, let's go to line 10 and grab Marcy calling from Michigan. And thanks for holding. What's your question for Dr. Dyer today?
Hi, Dr. Dyer. Thank you for taking my call.
You're welcome.
This is so exciting. I've seen you in Chicago before. I'm going to see you in May, coming up in Toronto.
Oh, yes.
My question for you today is, my father is also a huge fan of you. You've changed my life. You changed his life. But something I've shared with him that I've learned from you is that we came into this life. We choose our circumstances. We choose our parents, things like that. And he's never really read any of that in some of the things that he's read of yours, and he doesn't quite understand that. So I thought maybe you could expand on that, or where you learned it from, anything that you could help.
Yeah, I don't know where I learned things from, honestly. It's just intuitive, and a lot of the great teachers that I've had who have written some of the, and respected some of the greatest spiritual literature of all time, like from all East and West, from the Bhagavad Gita to, great spiritual teachers all over have, this has just been sort of their insights. I just think that this is a universe that is on purpose. That's just one of the things that science teaches us and so on. And I don't really rely very much on science for what it is that I believe, because science can, when we talk about whether this is, I'll hear people say, well, that's not evidence-based and so on. And, we know that everybody who ever showed up here in this universe showed up exactly when they were supposed to, by the virtue of the fact that they did.
Right.
And and we know that everybody that's in this universe that we've ever heard about has left it, that we notice that everything that's physical and material dematerializes. We know that. We watch our bodies go through that, and we watch, our homes go through that, and we watch the flowers go through, we watch everything go through that. And yet science can never give us an answer to the big questions about, what is that thing called non-being, or spirit, or formlessness, or the Tao, or God, or spirit. What is that? The really great lessons of life. All of us are here. We're all walking around. We all talk. We all think, and we never stop to think that, that every thought that we have is invisible. You can't get a hold of it. You can't see it. You don't know where it came from. You don't know where it's going to go. And that's the real essence of where we live, isn't it? We live in a formless universe, and the form part of it, even in quantum physics, they teach us that it's the space between the particles, that makes everything happen. It's out of the void, but science can't explain the void. No one can explain the void. So you just have to go to something that I call your intuition. And as you become more, I just always liked Einstein's line about, learn to think like God thinks. That's all he wanted to do. And as you think, whatever the creative source of this universe is, I know that I came from it, because I'm in this world, just like all the rest of us are. And so it seems to make sense to me that if I want to be able to be a part of the creative process and create the kind of life that I would like to create, that I have to act like that and think like whatever the creative source is, whatever you want to call it. God is fine for me, So it's like, to me, it's like acting like that. So how does creation take place? How do things happen? It isn't done violently. Like every morning, all of the flowers on the planet open up without any violence.
Right.
And the great wisdom that I've learned from the Tao Te Ching, for example, written 2,500 years ago. I think about what the world must have looked like 2,500 years ago. There was no running water, and people were living in caves, and it's like life expectancy was just a few years, and yet here there were people out there were these great spiritual teachers who were writing down things that that they didn't learn in school. They just and they've survived for thousands and thousands of years. And I get the sense that it had to happen for a reason. And then you go into the what is your first name, so I know who I'm talking to?
It's Marcy.
Marcy, I should know. That's my wife's name. As you're willing to go into the silence, as you're willing to get quiet, as you're willing to be, like I meditate a minimum of an hour every day. Most days it's at least 2 hours. And in that space, in that time of silence, sometimes I meditate when I'm in the ocean as well, but because I spend an hour or so a day in the ocean as well. But in those moments of just total pure silence, I get awarenesses, and I connect to, I think that that's what God is. It's like Melville said it in Moby Dick, God's one and only voice is silence. And when you go to the silence, when you get to that place within you, you start to trust in it, Marcy. It starts to become a friend to you, and you really feel like you're with God. And then the most bizarre things begin to happen. You start to, I teach this meditation. It's called japa.
Japa, yes, I have it.
The meditations for manifesting. So as you get to that place where you just you feel like you're in harmony with God and silence, because it's silence, it's the void. Have you read The Shift yet, the book, The Shift?
No, not the book. I had the movie.
Well, in there, I try to speak with some eloquence, but just total humility about not being able to express it very well. But who can? Aristotle couldn't, Socrates couldn't, Lao Tzu could. The opening line of the Tao says, the Tao that can be named is not the Tao. So it's like I can't name it, but all I can do is tell you that when I'm in that space, I know that I am participating in the act of creation, and that I can bring into this world virtually anything that I put my attention on, as long as I'm not doing it for me. In other words, for the me being my ego, this thing that we call Wayne, that if I can just get past that and then I can attract it. So I can attract all the love in the universe. I can attract all the abundance in the universe. And it's like, like Tilopa said, you've heard me say it, because you sound like you've listened to me before, have a mind that's open to everything.
And attached to nothing.
And attached nowhere, attached to nothing. And it's like I have no attachments any longer. I have no attachments to any of my stuff. It's all, I give it all away. I have no attachment to my children. I have no attachment to anyone or anything. I just want to be a being of love. And when I'm in that place, I sense that before and after are concepts that are very difficult to explain to someone who lives in a world of oneness. Because one of the things that it said in that little book I was telling you about called The Shack, one of the quotes in there was about, while we live in a world that has certain kinds of things going on, at the same moment that we are living in that world, that all of these things are going on, there's a world that lives in us. And this world that lives in us, it lives in our stomach, and it lives in our heart, and it lives in our head. And that world is a world that I just trust. And that world says to me, when you can get past the dichotomies, the beginnings and the ends, the ups and the downs, the rights and the wrongs, the males and the females, the goods and the bads, when you can get past all of that and go to this place of oneness, which I only know how to do in meditation, the minute I come out of it, I'm right back into this thing versus that thing, and up and down and all of that. But when I'm in that, I just know that that's what I was like before I showed up into this world of being. And that's what I'm headed back to. To know, as T.S. Eliot said, to know that world, to know where we came from for the very first time. We shall not cease from exploration. But at the end of all of our exploring will be to return to the place from which we originated, and to know it for the first time, and to know it. And I just know it. That's all I can say is I just know it, and I've learned it in the void. That's where I've learned it, which is where everything comes out of. Every book that I've ever written, and the one I'm about to write, it comes out of the void. It comes out of the... I don't even use an outline anymore, Marcy. Even when I go to speak, I just write a few words down on a piece of paper, but I just go within and I just get very quiet, and I repeat that line from the Course in Miracles. It says, if you knew, that means you have no doubt.
Who walked beside you at all times on this path that you have chosen, you could never experience fear or doubt again.
There it is. So
Course in Miracles.
Yeah, and
I have it written right. It's pasted right on my monitor at work.
And that's how I know, honey. That's how I know.
Well,
I know.
Thank you for your words. I'm going to be able to share this with my father, because I think him, along with many other people, are, they're kind of feeling like they live in a world of, this is what you get, this is what you're dealt, and that you didn't choose any of it. And I believe that we are co-creators.
Yeah, it's all alignment. It's nothing but alignment. We all come into this world from a place of well-being, and we return to a place of well-being while we're here. We have a choice. We can stay connected to that world of well-being, or we can take on the false self, and the false self is what I call ambition phase of our lives. And as you get a little bit more it isn't so much enlightened as you get more comfortable with with being in the void, because it is out of the void that everything, and even on the greatest scientists on this planet, the Max Planck and Albert Einstein, all of the great thinkers, they still always said the same thing, that, there is, you can go in your brain and you can find the commander in there, that you can find the place. You can find the command center, but you can never find the commander. The commander is that which is allowing these thoughts to come, and that's invisible. And you have to be comfortable with the void, with the invisible. And when you're really comfortable with it and you live within it and you just have a knowing, then what emerges from that is just that sense of what this whole show is about. Like I started with I don't know if you've been with me for the whole hour, but when I started with the turtles this morning, it's that whole sense of contentment. A crown it is that seldom kings enjoy. And what Shakespeare really meant is that seldom anyone enjoys. They're just not content. They're just trying to find their power. They're trying to find their fulfillment in doing something or accumulating something or winning something or being better than someone.
Right.
Instead of just being in that state of contentment. And when you're in a state of contentment, what difference does it make whether you chose it or not chose it? You're here, for God's sake. You're here. You got here somehow,
Right.
And you know that you're leaving this body. I know that. Yesterday I was quoted in I don't know if you saw it in Parade magazine. They had a question about this leukemia that my body has, and everybody seems to be so concerned about my leukemia and all of that, and I never give it a thought, because I know that my body is going to leave when it's supposed to. It's just like it showed up when it was supposed to. I didn't get all that. I showed up May 10th, 1940. It's like I'm not going around saying it should have been 1950. What the hell's going on? See, and the other thing, Marcy, is that if the ego was really in charge, if the false self was really in charge, I wouldn't be turning 70 on May the 10th.
Right, you'd be 25.
Absolutely. And I'd be, my hair would still be, I'd have a full head of hair, and, I wouldn't have, little age marks on my head and things like that. None of that would happen, and I wouldn't have slowed down and all of that. But I'm not in charge of that, and I know that. And you can think you are, and you can go off and get all kinds of surgery to make you think that you're not. But the fact is that, I always say nature always bats last.
Nature always what?
Nature always bats last. I don't know. Baseball, there's always a team. The home team always bats last, and the person who bats last has the last word, and that's nature. Nature bats last. It's like and all you have to do is get in tune and in harmony with that nature, and you just know everything. You just start to know everything. It's just that knowing becomes so wonderful. I had a wonderful experience with Esther and Jerry Hicks. You know who they are, I'm sure. The Abraham.
Huge fan. Thanks.
Well, I had a 1.5-hour session with Abraham myself last week on the telephone.
Wow.
And Abraham just talked to me about that whole concept of knowing, just that knowing. It was one of the most beautiful hours of my life. It really turned a lot of things around. I think we're leaving. I hear the music.
We're wrapping up.
This was a wonderful call. Thank you, Marcy.
So
God bless you. Thanks. And listen to this. Have your father listen to this. I think it'll help him.
And thanks for joining the show today. This has been Excuses Be Gone with Dr. Wayne Dyer. Welcome, Dr. Dyer. You're joining us again from Florida today, and hopefully it's a lot nicer there than it is here in Southern California. We're getting a ton of rain today, which we actually really need.
Oh, my goodness. We always say in Maui, no rain, no rainbows. We're always very grateful for the rain. I always think of rain as one of the great miracles of all. It's like every time it happens, people complain, but it's, without it, none of us could even stay alive for a day. So it's always an amazing gift that all of a sudden just everything, this mana from heaven just showers down on us from the skies and says, here's what you need to sustain yourself, here's what you're made of, here's what your earth is made of, this will grow all your food, this will take care of all your thirst, this will take care of everything. And I love the rain. I love to be in it and walk around it.
And we've got some great callers coming in. I'm noticing a lot of people from Canada today, several Canadian callers, Ontario, Quebec. So let's start with that. Would you like to go to Montreal?
Sure, I'd love to.
Let's check it out. Roxandra on line 1.
Hello.
Welcome to the show. You're on with Dr. Wayne Dyer today.
Thank you.
Hi,
for taking
Roxanne.
my call. I can't believe it. I'm the first one.
You are. How are you?
So today it worked out well. How am I? I wish I knew how to answer this question, but I could say it could be better, but I'm okay.
Well, that's good.
I wish I knew a bit more because I'm kind of stuck in a rut work-wise. I mean, not only work-wise, but the work aspect is one of the one that bothers me most because I don't know what to do with my life and find my life purpose. So I've been back to school for almost 9 years now, and I'm in the middle of a PhD that I don't know if I would finish. So that's a big...
That's not an unusual place for people in PhD programs. You get to a point where you ask yourself, what am I doing and what am I putting myself through this for?
Right, but it's, like context-wise. My supervisor died last year. From the beginning, I felt I didn't belong there. Initially, I was rejected. I had to reapply. And although the topic is really interesting because I thought I took it more like a mission. I said, I know I don't want to work in academia for sure. Why am I going through this one? It's very difficult too. So anyway, that's why I'm like, I don't want to do it unless I'm able to say I'm not going to regret it. I don't regret what I've done so far. But this year I'm really kind of, I don't know, maybe I needed to grieve because I had few losses several years, like up to 2 or 3, and maybe I'm very, very tired, so I did it's in between, like a kind of a transition, but I'm not a step further to figure out what's next for me. I have some areas, but I don't know how to package myself and how really to trust that I can do something.
Well, you really do know how, because no one can teach it to you now, especially now. How old are you?
49 last week.
Yeah, so you're almost a half a century, 50 times around the sun. You pretty much know how to do it, Roxanne. The fact is that you've just been trained with a bunch of memes to believe that things have to be a certain way and that you have to do things the way, that you programmed yourself to do them or someone else programmed you to do them. You get into a program and then you start asking questions about, is this where I belong? Should I be doing this? I don't know. And the fact is, all of it is just not even worth the agony that you put yourself through.
Yeah, probably not.
It really isn't. The truth is that all you get is today. We all know that. This is, you get the present moment. You get the now. If you can learn how to live fully and completely and totally in the present moment and just be there in this moment, realizing that the now is all you ever get, and that the future thing that you're all worried about is nothing more than just a now. And everything that's ever happened to you in the past, it didn't really happen to you in the past, it happened to you in the present moment. So that your relationship to life, and this is what I would say to everybody listening today, your relationship to life is really nothing more than your relationship to the present moment, how well you're able to live in it. And if you can find a way to go within, to get peaceful, to meditate, to get quiet, and that's why I always say the best way to handle all of these kinds of questions that we have for ourselves is to get our attention off of ourselves, off of our ego, off of what's in it for me, and off what I should be doing, and me, all of the I stuff, and just turn it around and begin to serve more. It's what I do all the time when I feel myself struggling, when I don't know quite what to do, even in relationships or with my work or whatever, is I just stop and I go through my mail and I pick out some letters from people who really are struggling and really are having a difficult time, and I reach out to them, and every time that I find myself letting go of thinking about myself and putting my attention on someone else, almost always I start to feel better, the answers become clearer, and I don't get myself so worked up into a dither over what I should be doing or what I shouldn't be doing. It's like I used to always quote from my friend Artie Pine, who was my agent many, many years ago. He passed away a few years back, and he used to say, I'm an old man and I've had many troubles, most of which have never happened.
True.
Almost all
I'm a good warrior, unfortunately. It's a learn. I know a part of it is a lot learned, but I'm very good at worrying.
You're what?
Which is not healthy, obviously, and I kind of in between this space, like struggling, stop worrying, and then beating myself up for it. And the problem is that I tried meditation, and I am not able to maintain a routine. I mean, I know how to meditate, at least one type, because I've tried it. It worked at one point, but then even when I try to do yoga or something, if I do it at home, I do it 2 or 3 days, and then I move to something else and get distracted with other things. And I know that would be one of the solutions to really And part of the problem was that in the beginning, that's how I stopped it, was I cannot stand to see my thoughts. It's so annoying that, like, I can't believe I'm thinking so much.
I know.
So bad.
I can hear it even in your voice. And you say to yourself, okay, I try yoga, and I do it for 2 or 3 days, and then I lose interest in it. Well, but what's wrong with that? You know, and
I think that's the bottom line, to realize there's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with that at all. And so you let go of yoga for a few days, and then you wake up one day and you say, I think I'll do yoga again. And, you know, like we all get conditioned with these, I call them memes and Excuses Be Gone. Have you read Excuses Be Gone? I really think you should read that. It would be very, very helpful to you. Mm-hmm. It's about overcoming all of these lifetime thinking habits. And the display quote for that book says, don't believe everything that you think. Right. You know, I mean, because you've been conditioned to think that you're supposed to be on a right track. You're almost 50 years old. You should know what you're doing. You should know where you're going. You're in a program. You should finish the program. You know, you should have some discipline. And there's no should about any of that. All you have to do is just enjoy yourself. And the best way to enjoy yourself and to be happy is to forget about yourself and reach out and serve other people. That's the greatest way to find your happiness. That's what I would recommend, truly, especially with the holiday season coming up.
Yeah, I mean, it's on my list, and it's just that I have to move it and act on it. Because I said, I have to go volunteer somewhere. I have to.
Absolutely.
I was too busy with my little selfish thing.
Absolutely. Too much ego, too much worry, too much concern about myself and what's in it for me, and am I doing the right thing? And we could trace that back to your parents and their parents and their parents' parents. And
but it doesn't help anymore because I'm tired of understanding. I've overanalyzed everything, and I want to move on.
Absolutely. My friend Stuart Wilde has we used to have a thing down on a refrigerator. He used to say, there are many things in life that I do not understand, and I like it that way.
Yeah.
You don't have to understand it.
Well, I'm not sure I will ever let go of that 100%, but I want to keep the learner part.
Give yourself permission to just be. You know, listen to the Beatles. You know, go listen to Let It Be, Let It Be. There will come an answer, let it be. It's one of the great slogans of all time. Just, stop the struggling, the internal stuff that you do with your mind, and just enjoy. You watch. Everything that you need will come along. We got to move along. Okay. I'm going to send you a copy of the shift, so stay tuned, okay?
Thank you very much, Dr. Wayne.
Thank you, Roxanne. Happy holidays.
Bye. Happy holidays.
Bye-bye.
And we'll get Roxandra a DVD copy, send her one out to Quebec. And we've got 2 minutes, maybe time to get started with someone really quickly. So let's go to Judy. She's also calling from Canada, from Ontario, and wants to know about self-sabotaging. A great question. Welcome, Judy.
Hi.
Hi, Judy.
Thank you for taking my call. And Dr. Dyer, I want to thank you for all of the work that you do. It's just awesome stuff, and it's really helped me a lot.
Thank you very much.
My question today, though, is you only have 2 minutes, so I'll be very quick.
No, that's okay. We can always come back if we have to.
That's okay. Every time I start to move forward with anything that I want to do that I'm excited about, but in particular weight loss, I start to get body problems. Like right now, I've really decided to take the next level towards being fit and healthy, and my back goes out. So the things that I plan to do, I can't do. And it's not that it's going out because I'm not doing exercises properly. It's even before I get started. So I'm wondering, what is in your head? Like, I've been reading Excuses Be Gone, and it's not a conscious thought. It just sort of happens, and I'm wondering, what is that self-sabotage somewhere in those memes that...
That's a really good question, because I know I do the same thing myself. As a matter of fact, I was just telling Diane, both of us were talking about having a lower back pain ourselves today.
Well, maybe it's just going around then.
No, I don't think that it's going around. As much as I think that when you set yourself up to do something that you haven't been able to do for a long time, like how long have you been not in the weight level that you would like to be? How long have you been overweight? How many?
10 years.
So you got 10 years. You got a whole decade behind you of carrying around excess. How much extra weight?
About 160 at this point.
160 extra?
Yep.
Okay. Basically, you're saying that you're self up with a goal or an ambition of some kind to get yourself back into the kind of shape that you know you belong in, and that is your birthright. And that as soon as you make the commitment to do that, something goes a whack, and off you go.
Right.
You're listening to someone who has been an addict for a good part of his life, or at least part of addictive behavior. As a kid, it was to Coca-Cola and sugar, and then it was to nicotine, and then it was to alcohol and drugs and things like this. And so I know the game, all right? And when you want to change something like an addictive pattern, and you're talking about an addiction to food here, obviously, because you're saying you're carrying around an extra 160 pounds. That's another person and a half, an extra person that you're carrying around, and all of the dangers of doing such a thing to your body.
Correct.
And you want to make the change. And when I wanted to make the change to stop drinking Coca-Cola, for example, when I wanted to stop with the caffeine, or when I wanted to stop with the nicotine, or stop with the alcohol, and so on, I would find myself that there's a sabotaging system built into addictive behavior. And this sabotaging system is one that really, because I think that things like sugar, which is one of the things you're addicted to, I can feel it, is something that is an entity all unto itself, and it has almost a design on you, and it begins to speak to you in a certain way, and it begins to say to yourself, you begin to say, well, I'm going to overcome this, this overeating thing, this lack of exercising thing, and the entity, whether it's cocaine or whether it's sugar or caffeine or whether it's alcohol or whatever it might be, almost speaks back to you and says, you think it's going to be that easy? You think I'm going to let go of you quite like that?
And that's how it feels.
Pardon me?
That's how it feels.
Yeah, I don't believe that it's just how it feels. I believe that's true. Okay, I believe that it does. Like everything in the universe has an energy system. Cocaine is an energy system. Caffeine is an energy system, and it's like, there's just little pieces of it, but there's one great big energy system, and it's showing up in all kinds of ways. So that when you set yourself up to go ahead and do what it is that you really want to do, and you start talking to yourself in the right way and having the right affirmations and doing all the kinds of things that we speak about here on A House Radio, and that I speak about in my book, in many of my books, and in the film and so on. What happens is that self-sabotaging system begins to kick in, and it begins to say, if you think that's going to be easy, then I'm going to take this away from you. I'm going to make it more difficult for you to. And what you have to do, Judy, more than anything else, is connect to your highest self. And the highest place within you is really God. And so it's like, instead of saying, I've quoted this a few times on the show, my friend Patty Davis, who was President Reagan's daughter, who was, if you know anything about her, was a cocaine addict. Well, Reagan was president and had a terrible relationship with her father and with her mother and so on. And she used to say, I'm going to quit this, but I'm going to stop disappointing myself. I'm so tired of disappointing myself. And every time she would do that, again, something would come in and she would sabotage herself, and she'd go back on another binge, and before you know it, she'd be right back where she started. And then she said she finally came to a place in her heart where she said, I just decided that I no longer wanted to disappoint God. And I think this is something that you might want to think about really hard. You came into this world from a place of well-being, from a place of perfect well-being. You didn't come into this world obese. You didn't come into this world with any inclinations towards obesity or towards carrying around all of this extra weight that you have allowed to pile onto yourself. What you did is you came into a place aligned with God, aligned with your spirit, and you allowed yourself to get away from your spirit. I recommend that you get back and say to yourself, I no longer intending to disappoint God when you behave in a certain way or when you go to church or so on. I'm talking about the highest place within yourself, the place that you originated from, your source of being, and that is who you are at the very highest level. You're not here as a human being having a spiritual experience. It's the reverse, Judy. You are a spiritual being having a human experience. And that spiritual part of yourself, you have disappointed it, and you're sad about it. And so every time you go to get yourself back into that aligned place, this energy, whether it's the sugar or whether it's the sitting around or whether it's the sore back or whatever it is, begins to kick in and to try to get you off of that path because you've been so accustomed to being on a non-spiritual path. So what you want to do is when the backache comes and all of that, you say, that's fine, but I'm still not going to overeat today, and I'm still going to walk around the block, even though I said I wouldn't. I'm going to even do it with a sore back. In other words, I'm going to talk back to these self-sabotaging lifetime thinking habits that I have had, and I'm going to talk back to them in a way that they've never been talked to before. I'm going to remind myself and go through the paradigm. Have you read Excuses Be Gone?
Yes, I have it on my desk still. Yeah.
Good.
I still look at it all the time.
Okay, the seven-part paradigm at the end of that book with the first question is, what thoughts do I have? Is it true that it's going to be difficult for me to change? Is it true that it's going to take me a long time? Is it true that I don't have the strength to do this? And you begin to realize that those thoughts simply are not true. You're letting yourself be guided by false statements, false thoughts within yourself. And as you begin to make that shift into the truer statement, which is, I have within me the capacity to be the perfect well-being person that I was intended to be, and you hang on to that affirmation consistently, When the backache comes, you'll just ignore the backache. When you say, I'm too tired, you'll ignore the tiredness. When your schedule changes and it just seems like you were all ready to go do your exercise and it doesn't work, you'll do your exercise before you go to bed. You'll sleep a little bit less, whatever it might be. You'll start to use the discipline that you have, that your spirit is speaking to you of, instead of the part of you, the ego part of you, which is always looking for some reason to stay and do the easiest thing. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome, and you can do this.
That.
You really can do this. Keep in touch with me, okay? I'd like to hear your progress on this, because once you have an affirmation, I'm going to be writing a book called Wishes Fulfilled, and it's really based on the great teachings of Neville Goddard. And Neville speaks about the power of assuming. Your imagination is the greatest gift that you've been given. In your imagination, you see yourself weighing and looking the way you want to. You even draw a picture of yourself, find the picture of yourself from 10 years ago when you were the weight that you wanted to be, and you reproduce that as many places as you can. You put it in your car, you put it on your refrigerator, you put it on your bed, you put it on your mirror where you put your makeup on. You have that picture everywhere to constantly remind yourself that who I am is this divine, perfect piece of well-being that I originated from, and that's where I intend to stay, and God will help you do it, I promise.
That's an awesome idea. I never thought of doing that.
Yeah, start with it right now. And when we hang up the phone, you got a backache?
Yes.
Where are you, in Ontario?
Yes.
Okay, so put your warmer clothes on, whatever it is, and go, if you'll do this for me, just walk around the block.
Okay. I don't need warmer clothes. I have 160 extra pounds.
Okay. Can you walk around the block? Just walk around the block once today.
Okay.
Okay, just go do that. And try to walk briskly, no matter how much your back hurts. Just do that. Okay? And now you've taken your first step. But before you do that, we're going to give you an address, and we're going to send you a copy of the shift.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks, Judy. God bless you, my friend.
You too.
Namaste.
And let's go to Mandy next. She's calling from Orange, California, on line 4. And thanks for joining us, Mandy. You're on with Dr. Wayne Dyer.
Hi, thank you so much for taking my call.
Mandy, there's a minister handy, and it sure would be dandy if we let him make a peace. Do you remember that?
No, I don't.
So don't you linger. Here's a ring for your finger for Mandy and me. Okay, that's a song to look up. How are you, dear?
I'm doing okay.
Good.
I'm calling because my husband has decided that he no longer wants to be married. Mm-hmm. We have 2 small children, and it's sort of come out of nowhere. And I need to know how I can handle this gracefully and not react with anger, because we have children and we need to be friends. And I don't know if I can do that or...
Yes, you can do that, dear. Yes, you can do that. Has this been something that's been coming on, or is it a big surprise to you?
It was a really big surprise. I mean, we're not perfect. We've kind of taken each other for granted over time, but I never realized he was so unhappy. He's never shared that. He's been stuffing his feelings rather than telling me how he feels, and it got too much for him to handle, and then he just snapped and just said, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore.
Is he seeing someone else?
I've asked him, and I don't believe that's the case. He says no, he's not where he thought he would be. He doesn't feel like the man he should be. He doesn't feel like he's providing for us financially the way he should be by this point in his life. And I feel like he has a lot of self-esteem issues that he's reacting like he's running. I'm not sure. I don't understand it.
How old is he?
He's 34.
And how long have you been married?
We've been married almost 9 years.
And your reaction is, as far as you're being able to handle this, yes? You sound rational. You sound like you have to be friends, that you can't, and divorce isn't that uncommon a thing. Like every other marriage ends in it in our country. So it's not like half the people in the country are failures. It's not that you failed at anything. You've produced a result. But the question is, where are you emotionally in this thing? You're the mom of 2 little children.
Well, I don't want it to end. I think that we have such a good foundation, and we've been friends for so long and together for so long that I want to work at it, and he can't do that. And so I feel like if we end this without trying to get counseling, that it's throwing it away.
Yeah, I understand.
I'm asking him, 6 months. Let's try it for 6 months. And if you can't change, I'll let you go. I'll let you go do what you need to do. But to just to just up and walk out on it. I don't understand that.
It doesn't sound right to me, Mandy. It really doesn't.
He's not leaving the home. He wants to. I can't afford our home by myself, but he wants to make sure that financially I'm still able to stay in our house for the girls, even if that means he has to live with his parents. And so I don't really understand what he's doing. It feels like he has guilt and self-esteem issues, and I don't know when do I let him go.
It feels, and I'm just talking instinctively here, but it feels to me like he's been seeing somebody else, and that's a hard thing for him to be able to admit to and doesn't want to. I'm just telling you that off the top of my head, that's what registers. Yeah. I don't know that it's true or not, and I have no right to say it other than it's just what I feel, and that's how I run this radio show.
And it's not the first time I've heard it either. So
yeah, have you had any suspicion of anything like that in the last 6 months or so?
He has like a best friend that he's really close to, but she's a lesbian, and so I've met her girlfriends, and we've spent time together.
No, I don't mean that. I mean, has he stayed away from you sexually, for example, in the last 6 months or so?
No.
So you still have a physical closeness?
We aren't now, not for the last couple of weeks, because I told him, I said, if this is what you want, we can't lead one life and not the other, because I will think that you want to be with me. I'll misunderstand that, and so we cut it off.
Yeah.
He's staying in the home. He's sleeping on the sofa. We haven't told our children yet. We haven't told our family. He doesn't have a plan for what he wants to do, and that makes me confused, too. Why wouldn't he have a plan?
What I want you to do, Maddie, what I want you to do, because we only have a few minutes here, what I want you to do is to go within, and I want you to meditate and get quiet, and I want you to find the strength that has allowed you to give birth to those two girls of yours, and that has allowed you to hold this family together, and has allowed you to, be the woman, the strong woman that you are, and stay in that strength, and begin to realize and recognize that, whether or not you're with your husband or not with your husband, that your sense of your strength and your peace and your confidence in yourself is not going to be determined on the basis of anything that he does. Okay, he doesn't get control of that. He doesn't get to decide whether or not you're going to be this strong, a powerful woman. Now, my personal recommendation, I'm doing this on just a few minutes of talking to you, would be to tell him, if you really don't want to be married to me, then you should be leaving right now. And you should be making arrangements to take care of your family and to financially make sure that we're all in good shape. Are you working?
Yes.
You are. So if that's really where you want to be, and let him experience what this feels like, because it's one thing that he may be going through some kind of a midlife crisis, or he might be going through some kind of a difficulty. I suspect of something else. But regardless of what my suspicions are, let him experience what it feels like. I just don't think living in limbo is going to be a healthy thing for you or for the children.
I'm sorry, that's what I was thinking, too. He wants to wait until after the holidays so that we don't disrupt the children, and the timing is so bad that...
I think what I would offer to your husband is, I want to save this marriage, and it's very important to me. But if you don't feel the same way, then obviously, it can't be done just by one person. If we need to seek out counseling or marriage therapy of some kind, I'd be happy to participate. If you're not willing to do that, and you made up your mind that you want to end this marriage, then I'm inviting you to leave today, and we'll set up a legal arrangement so that you take care of your financial responsibilities, and we'll move on with our lives. And let him see what the consequences of that are, because if it's not this holiday season, it's going to be another holiday season. And I think putting those things on hold, I think letting him know the consequences of his behavior and what he is asking, the consequences of that, especially with two small children, are very, very serious. And he needs to know it, and that he doesn't have someone who's sitting at home waiting for him to make up his mind whether he wants to work on this or not.
Okay.
Does that make sense to you?
Complete.
Yeah, and you sound like a strong man. I wouldn't be afraid of this at all. How is your relationship to your children?
It's wonderful.
And how about his relationship to them?
He's been disconnected for a while, and I think it goes back to his self-esteem issues. He loves them, and he's a great father, but he doesn't give them everything that... He has a lot of distractions. He uses his laptop and his phone to keep himself busy.
Yeah.
So he has a lot of, self-esteem issues, and he doesn't want to face...
But you don't need to be buried in his self-esteem issues, okay?
Yeah.
That's, if he's got that to work on and you're willing to work on it with him, that's one thing. But for you to sit around and be sad inside and worry, it's not going to do any good for you or anyone else. And he needs, as I said, when people make these kinds of assertions and they come at you, then they need to know the consequences of their behavior. And and these are the consequences. You know, you're giving up your children. You're giving up your role as father. You're giving up your role as a husband. If you want to work on it, I'm here for you. If you don't, then you need to get out there and work on it yourself, and I'll be fine.
Okay.
Okay, sweetheart?
Thank you so much.
Stand by. Have you seen The Shift?
I haven't.
We're going to send you a copy, okay?
I'm guessing it's going to be very helpful.
I think it will be. I'm sure it will be. Thanks. God bless you, man.
Thank you.
Namaste.
And we have time for one more, the bonus call that we never think we have time for.
Right.
And let's go to Deborah, line 3, calling from New York. Hi, Deborah. You still there? Thanks for holding.
Yes.
Hi, Deborah.
Hi, Wayne. I am so thrilled. I feel so blessed to be able to speak with you.
Thank you. I do, too.
I have been a fan of yours since your erroneous zones.
My goodness.
Back when I was a young adult.
You're an old person like me now, then.
Yes, well, I'm 53.
Oh, you're just a baby.
Oh, yeah. I think we're all babies in the soul.
That's true.
So, Wayne, I have a rather unique situation. I recently retired from the NYPD, where I was a sergeant for over 25 years.
Right.
And so I have devoted my life to service.
Mm-hmm.
And the last few years, I got certified in executive coaching and leadership training, and I thought that would be my second career.
Mm-hmm.
I have had this incredible desire to set up a foundation for returning military members who are coming back from active duty to help reacclimate them to civilian life, help them get a start with counseling, maybe some job fairs. And it's a very strong desire. I think of it all the time. So what I'm planning on doing is writing a book on leadership and, using the coaching method of leadership to help people. Because in the paramilitary organizations like the NYPD and like the military, you bark out an order, you expect it to be followed, or else there's negative consequences.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the coaching method is to really identify the individual, find out what it is that makes them want to participate, and speak to that. So I'm looking to do that and to set up this foundation. I retired in April. I started writing the book, and I have just lost complete motivation. I find myself just, letting it all fall by the wayside.
Yeah, I'd like you to go. You're in New York?
Yes.
So maybe tonight you can go out and see this film called Brothers.
Okay.
Have you seen it?
No.
Have you heard about it?
I saw commercials on TV.
It's about returning servicemen, and it was made for you. So that will be a good thing to get started.
Okay.
Just see if you can find out where it's playing and go see that.
Okay.
And again, it's like what we were talking about throughout this whole show. It's like a theme has been, is to take some kind of action, any kind of action, specific action. Because what happens is, and this is, again, it goes back to when I write about an excuses be gone, we fall back into our habitual self-sabotaging ways. Once we get an idea, we think that it's great and all of that, and we put it out there and we start, and then we start to lose interest because everything isn't falling into place, or because God isn't just putting it right into our lap and saying, here it is for you. It's for you, I think, just reinvigorating yourself with the notion of how important this is, and then find one returning service member in your neighborhood. Somebody, are you in New York City or New York State?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're in New York City, so you shouldn't have any difficulty with that.
No, not at all.
A veterans affair. And just bring one person over to your house that you can start coaching.
Okay.
Whoever it might be, somebody that's come home from if you can't, then you can go over to one of the military hospitals.
I put out on my website and ask for everybody who tunes into my website to send me the excuses that you use most commonly in your life. As I sat down to write this book, this is the third chapter in Excuses Be Gone. And I got 5,500 replies. And my friend and I started just taking them apart and just putting them into different, this is the same as this is the same as this. And sure enough, there were 18 categories. And so there are 18 excuse categories. On the PBS special, you see them as thought bubbles that'll come up when it plays on June the 1st. I'll just give them to you real quickly. And I want you to understand now, these are all viruses. These are all things that were placed into your mind that you have come to believe, that have infiltrated and spread throughout your culture. There are cultural ways of thinking that do not hold up to any of the components of the Excuses Be Gone paradigm. That if you begin to practice it, you can change it, whatever it is. I'd like you to think, particularly those of you who are closet addicts in here, and closet eaters as well. I'd like you to just sit right now and just visualize that tomorrow you can be free of it. Tomorrow. Easily. Easily. And everything that you need, and everyone that you need, and whatever money you need, all of it will begin to show up for you. you can make that shift. Tomorrow, you're free of it. That's how powerful this is. I've seen it work. It will be difficult. Excuse. It will be risky. It will take a long time. There will be family drama if I do this. So I don't do it. I don't deserve it. It's not my nature. I can't afford it. You should never, ever, ever say the words, I can't afford it, and use money as a reason why you can't attract into your life what you want. Of course, there is money out there for you. You just haven't connected to it. You've got to have within you an understanding that that is simply an explanation that keeps you from doing what it is that you want to do. You can afford to go to college. You can afford to travel. You can afford to get anything that you want in your life to make your life work at the level that you want to. You can't afford it. The money is out there. The capacity for making it, attracting it into your life is within you. But if you believe that what I'm saying is not true, you're right. And that's a meme. That's a mind virus. You've already accepted and you haven't challenged whether or not the thought that you are thinking that you can't afford it is true or not. How many in this room have ever had the experience of believing that you couldn't afford to do something, and you went home, and suddenly an unexpected bonus had showed up in some way in your life? A tax refund, somebody sent you money, whatever, you found it, whatever. How many people have had that experience at one time or another in your life? Look around. Everybody's had that experience. It's a universal experience. And yet you convince yourself that it can't happen for you. Why would you continue with that thought? I'm getting ahead of myself. All right. No one will help me. There's 7 billion people on the planet. They all want to help you. Almost all of them are looking to help somebody. And you're convinced that there's nobody out there that will help you with what it is that you want to do or what your dream is. I'm not strong enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm too old or too young. The rules won't let me. It's just too big. I don't have the energy. My family history won't let me. I'm too busy. I'm scared. It's a shift that has only come upon me even since I finished Excuses Be Gone. But I managed to get a big hunk of it in because I added it, because it came later after it had been submitted, and I said, I got to put this in here. But it's even much more detailed for me now. The greatest gift that you have been given is your imagination. In your imagination, in your thoughts, you have the ability to be able to create anything you want for yourself in your life. Anything in your thoughts. Would you agree with that? That you can think and create an image of what it is that you would like to be able to create. So the first, I'm reading somebody named Neville. How many have ever heard of Neville? A few, maybe 25, 30 people out of 2,500. Neville was like an itinerant preacher. He died in 1972. He used to lecture out here on the West Coast in Los Angeles. It's Neville Goddard, but he just went by the name Neville. And he's written several books. You can find him on the internet. He wrote something called The Power of Awareness, which is, I don't have it. Hay House is going to have it. He's passed away. His daughter, Victoria, has put out some of it, but it's available, and we're going to put it out there because it's one of those little books that I've read 5 times now, and I'm not exaggerating. I've read it 5 times. I read it on the flight over here from Maui yesterday. It's not long, 120 pages or so, but you can read a paragraph 40 times, and you can just be zowed by it. You can be wowed by it when you contemplate what it is that is being said here and whether it. And I keep thinking my experience in writing has always been to take what some people think of as complicated, like the Tao and quantum physics and things like that, and to just present it in a way that the cab drivers can understand it, and that school teachers can understand it, and that all of us regular folks can get. And that's what I want to do with Neville. And I'm going to write a book about it, not this year, but next year. And I've already got the cover for it, and I've already got it sitting on my table. Literally, I do. It's called Wishes Fulfilled. And I wrote a book years ago called Manifest Your Destiny. That's like elementary school compared to what this is. And I just want to give you just a little touch of it in the next few minutes. It starts, I take 7 principles that you have to sort of get if you want to apply the excuses be gone paradigm. And these 7 principles, I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm just going to go through a couple of them. The first one is contemplation. And I've talked about contemplation before. Aristotle said that contemplation is the highest form of action, that it's action. That what you think about is what you become. But it's even more than that. And I wrote out the specifics from Neville of it. I'm just going to go through a few of them here. I did this on the PBS show as well. Contemplation is the continuous use of your thought process. Like, what do you contemplate? What do you think about? How do you use your mind? Remember now, I started this by saying that the greatest gift that you've ever been given is the gift of your imagination. That you can create for yourself in your thoughts what it is that you would like to have for yourself. The problem with it is that most people don't get it. They think that I just think it and that's not really reality. What I'm suggesting here is a shift in thinking about how you contemplate, so that contemplation doesn't just become something that you think about, it becomes a way of being. That contemplation, that your thoughts are actually like things that begin the process of materialization. That what you contemplate in your mind, ultimately you can harden into material reality, into form. In fact, everything that has been hardened into material form began with someone's imagination, began with a thought. Okay? So that William Blake said that everything that you now see was once only imagined. Everything. This room, your cell phone, the clothes you're wearing, everything, including you, that you are imagined into reality by God. That you are a product of the imagination of the Tao of God. And so that sounds like a little far out kind of thing, but it's more than that. And just stay with me for a moment. If you contemplate with thoughts that match originating spirit, you have the same power as originating spirit. If you can think like God thinks, you have the same power as God, because you are God. You are a piece of God. You must be like what you came from. You must be. I illustrate that in the film in a really beautiful scene in there. We must be like what we come from. If you take out an ounce of blood from my veins and the cholesterol rating is 140, you can be certain, for sure, that all the rest of the blood going through my veins, the other 5 quarts or pints or whatever's in there, have 140 as well, because what was taken out must be like what it came from. It's just a simple law of the universe, right? When contemplation is a vibrational match to originating spirit, a vibrational match to originating spirit, you gain the cooperation of divine mind, attracting and fulfilling your desires. As you begin to contemplate from a place of not thinking about the end, but thinking from the end, and never allowing yourself to deter yourself from that thought, you gain the access of divine mind. It's how it works. I got the mic, folks, and you paid to hear me. This has always worked for me. It works for me. It's what I do. My children will tell you that. They will tell you how crazy I am. That I get a thought in my mind about what it is that I am going to do, and I can't be detracted because I will not allow my attention to be taken away, because I'm thinking, I believe that when I have those thoughts and they match originating spirit, that I will get the cooperation, and it always happens. Always. Always. Contemplation is therefore a kind of action in and of itself which sets into motion all of the creative forces of the universe. Now here's what I want to tell you about excuses. When you rely on excuses, you allow your false self, that is the ego, which I spoke about at the beginning, to contemplate what you do not want or what you cannot get. That's what those 18 excuses are. They're all misalignments. They are contemplating what can't happen. How difficult it's going to be, how long it's going to take, how much money it's going to cost, and you don't have it. As you contemplate in that way, you cannot create for yourself what you want. You create what you are contemplating. And then you stay down here, and the universe offers you experiences that match up to what you are contemplating. When you contemplate up here, in harmony with divine mind, the universe offers you experiences that match up here. The problem is that you're so easily taken away from your imagination. But I'm going to change that in the next 6 minutes. The presence of any of the excuses that I just outlined there for you in your life is evidence that you contemplate what you can't do or have. So you're really good at contemplating what you don't want, or what you can't have, or what's impossible. And everybody's doing it all the time and wondering why nothing shows up or the changes don't take place. To rid yourself of excuses, you must learn to practice contemplating what you intend to manifest and simultaneously detach from the outcome. So that's contemplation. Now here's what Neville said, and this really got to me. He said, 1 in a million. Now there's 300 million people in America. That means 300 people know this. All the rest don't get it. That's what he said. And he literally was speaking 1 in a million. That when you want to understand something mentally, you contemplate it. You cogitate on it. You think about it. You compare it. You analyze it. The first 4 letters of analyze. You're anal, right? You do all of this stuff. You contemplate, you think about it. When you want to understand something intellectually and mentally, you contemplate it. When you want to understand something spiritually, you must become it. You must become it. And that's where we're going now. And that's where I take you in the middle part of this book. Now, what you have to do, this is what Neville said, and what I'm saying to you, is you take in your imagination what you would like to create for yourself, and you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. You assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Memorize it. I have. I can say it. I say it 1,000 times a day to myself. Assume the feeling. Relationships, sickness, my work, my children, how I relate in my life. Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. What is your wish? It's whatever you have in your imagination. How do you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled? You must become it. And to understand something spiritually, you can't just contemplate it. You now must become it. In your mind, in your imagination, you must become it. As you become it, now you have, here's the difficulty. Where do you place your attention on what it is that you are wishing for yourself in your imagination? There are 2 kinds of attention. The first is called objective attention. So you have a wish, you have a desire, you want to lose the weight, you want to overcome the addiction, you want to create manifest abundance into your life, you want to get the job, whatever it is. You have the freedom to think it, to imagine it, right? You can think it. You're allowed to think it. Nobody can take that away from you. Now you assume the feeling of that wish fulfilled. What does that feel like inside of your body? What does it feel like? And ultimately, now you have to decide, where am I going to place my attention on what it is that I intend to manifest or what I want to create for myself? If you use subjective attention, what you do is you allow anything outside of yourself, like somebody says, oh, well, you got a really bad speech impediment. You know, I can't even understand you, or somebody makes fun of you, or it doesn't work for you. And immediately you allow your attention to go off of what it is that you are using your imagination to create. And the minute that you do that, you've lost it. The other is called objective attention. And this is, you never allow anyone or anything, no matter what comes your way, to take you away from your wish, your vision. It's yours. Nobody gets to say that's just a crock of shit. They can say that all they want to, and you immediately go to the feeling, you've assumed the feeling of the wish fulfilled. You are not thinking about having that job, or about being free of your addiction, or about losing the weight. You've already lost it. It's in your mind. That's your imagination. This is how manifestation takes place. And so everybody that says anything to you, hey, chubby, how you doing today? Or, yeah, you're still poor, or whatever it is, you instantly go to, I feel great. I feel terrific. This is mine. You don't get any piece of it. You can't have it. It's mine. Okay? Now, when you do that, what happens is you put into play what's called the subconscious mind. Now, the subconscious mind, the mind that you use to drive back and forth to work every day. You don't think about where you put your foot and does it go on the gas pedal and do I have to have it and do I have to shift and should I turn and should I slow down and you don't do all of that, right? You can drive all the way across the country and never think about what the hell you're doing. And never make a mistake and stop at every red light and go make your turns and all of that because you've turned it all over to this subconscious mind, this part of you that is just working on automatic pilot, right? Your subconscious mind, which is where all of your actions take place and all of your creation takes place, cannot make a distinction between what you are feeling in your body as a result of your imagination and living there, or what you are experiencing every day in the material world. It doesn't know the difference. So now here's the key. Now I'm getting excited. Now this is really good. The last 5 minutes of your day, before you go into your subconscious mind to marinate for the next 8 hours, what do you do? How do you use your imagination, your mind, your thoughts? What do you use it for? Most of you use it to review all of the things that you don't like about what's going on in your life, and all of the things that are missing, and all of the reasons why it's not working again. And I heard that bald-headed bastard up there talking, and it may work for him because, he's rich and famous, but this ain't working for me. I can guarantee you it's not going to happen. And on you can go with all of the reason. He talked to me this way, and then she said that, and the money isn't coming in, I can't pay the bills, and that bastard I'm married to, he doesn't ever listen to whatever, and on it goes. You could fill a swimming pool. Remember Jackson Brown? I could fill a swimming pool with my tears, thinking about the way that you think at night. So now, the last 5 minutes, you've just reviewed everything that's wrong, everything that's missing, everything that's not going to happen, everything that I'm depressed about, all of the reasons why the world is going to hell, about this, I'm probably going to get that swine flu. I've been thinking about pigs a lot, and the economy's going into the toilet, and I'm going to probably lose my job, and I'm not going to have this, and my kids, they need braces, and I can't afford them, and my kids don't even like me anyway, and on you go. You're using your mind. Now you're just about to go off into your subconscious mind, and you've got 8 hours. 8 hours. 8 hours. 1/3 of your day to marinate on all the things that are wrong. What I want you to do tonight is I want you to take the last 5 minutes when you're in bed alone or with someone else, what doesn't matter. It's the last 5 minutes when it's over, okay? And what I want you to do in those 5 minutes is I want you to go back to assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled in your imagination. Because now your subconscious mind is going to do something for you. It's going to harden or start the process of hardening a thought into form. It starts there. That's how you get form out of thought, through this subconscious mind, which can't distinguish whether you're just thinking it and then feeling it. Change your concept of yourself by creating an idea in your mind that you can identify with it until you become it. So a radical change of your concept of yourself. and get a picture in your mind of what you want to attract that is so strong that you become it. You become it in your mind, okay? You know a thing, I said this earlier, you know a thing mentally by thinking about it. You know a thing spiritually by becoming it. You are now it, and you are operating from that perspective. You have achieved what it is that you want to achieve in your life. And the third is you assume the feeling of that wish fulfilled. You feel what that feels like in your body. Your imagination, number 4, is able to do all that you ask in proportion to the degree of your subjective attention. That's complicated, but it's basically what I've just explained. Your imagination, your mind, your thoughts, where materialization begins and ends, is able to do all that you ask in proportion to the degree of your subjective attention. How much are you willing to hang on to it, not because it's something that you want so bad, but it's because it's something that you already are. You're already it. Okay? And so all of your attention that you place on your wish being fulfilled is subjective. It's yours. Nothing outside of you, nothing that comes along in the circumstances of your life can change that. You have to discipline yourself to get to that place. You access divine cooperation by staying in the state of what you have imagined with your subjective attention. This is how you harden an imaginative wish into a material reality, by staying in that state. It ultimately has to become your reality. You will act upon it because your subconscious mind will start offering you up experiences to match up to that. And when I started writing the book, and I do that, that's why when I start to write a book, I already have the cover of the book and the jacket and the title sitting in front of me, and I look at it every single day. It's already done. All I have to do is be the conduit to let it happen. I do the same thing when I give a talk like this. You think I take this for granted? You think I believe that I can get up here and talk for 3 hours without notes and make it interesting and compelling and give you something new? And so you think I take that for granted? I bust my ass doing this. People tell me you make it look so easy. There's nothing easy about it. I have already imagined all of this. I've already lived with this, and my kids all know. Don't bug me an hour and a half or 2 hours before I speak. Don't call me. Don't knock on my door. Don't ask me any questions. Don't ask me what you're wearing. Don't ask me anything. I am already completing this talk. And now I can come out here and I can allow divine mind to work through me because my subconscious mind has given me all of the experiences that I need. That's how it works. 6. Picturing the future without assuming the feeling is simply called futile daydreaming. Let me say it again. Picturing the future without assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled is just idle, futile daydreaming. That's all that is. You have to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. You have to say that 1,000 times a day until you really get it. I said this already, use the last 5 minutes to awaken in your awakened state, to assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled. It can't hurt. It's your imagination. Why not review what it is that you want and what you already are instead of what you can't have and what's not working? Because that's what you've been doing for your lifetime. That's why you use all of these excuses. Because you become a prisoner to them. They become true for you when, in fact, if you put them to the test, there's nothing true about them at all. The only reason that you keep using them is you keep contemplating what you don't want and what you can't have. And great spiritual masters and those who are great achievers, they don't put their attention. I learned that from my teacher, Abraham Maslow, back in the 1960s when I was working on my doctoral studies. He said, self-actualizing people never put their attention on what's wrong or on what's missing. He said, if you want to be a great therapist, don't talk to people about their problems. Give them 5 minutes and then spend the rest of the time on solutions, on what you're going to do about it and what's possible for you and what you can make happen, and get them to leave your office knowing within that they're already what they want to be. Your imagination is this incredible gift from which all things originate, to which all things return. That's you and God at work. And finally, experience in your imagination what you would experience in reality as if it had already achieved, if you'd already achieved it. Not as an onlooker thinking of the end, but as a participant thinking from the end. Make it pleasurable. Okay, so this substance that I'm speaking about here is consciousness. It's called consciousness. It is your imagination which forms consciousness, this substance, into concepts which are then manifested as conditions and circumstances and physical objects. So it's your imagination which takes consciousness and turns it into concepts which, when they're manifested, they come out as conditions or circumstances and physical objects. Imagination made your world. This supreme truth is, with but few exceptions, man is not conscious of it. Most of us simply are not conscious of the fact that within us we have the ability to take consciousness, move it in our imagination into circumstances, move it into conceptualizations, and then move it into form through our imagination. That you have the ability to do that. You can become a manifester if you think from the end. Now, the paradigm, which is the real essence of Excuses Be Gone. It's 7 questions that you look at, and you look at in a hard way. I'm just going to go through a few of them. First question. Every excuse that you use, it's going to be difficult. It's going to take a long time. I can't afford it. We'll use those. First question to ask yourself about that excuse as you begin the process of fulfilling your wishes is it true? Is that thought true? I want to do this, but it's going to take a long time. I want to do this, but it's going to be difficult. I want to do this, but I can't afford it. Those are just 3 of them. The second part of this question is, can you be 100% certain that the excuse that you are using for not making your life work the way you want it to is true? Can you be 100% certain that it is true, that it's going to be difficult, that it's going to take a long time, that you can't afford it? Can you be 100% certain that it's not going to be difficult? You can never be 100% certain of anything, can you? So you can't be 100% certain that what you would like to do or accomplish or create for yourself is going to be difficult. And you can't be 100% certain that it is going to be difficult. But one of those thoughts will lead you to overcoming the resistance and creating what you want. And the other one is a guarantee that you'll never get it. Why would you opt for the thought that says it's going to be difficult and you can't be certain that it's true, rather than it's going to be easy, which you can't be certain that it's 100% certain that it's true, but at least if you believe that it's going to be easy, you'll start going down that path. And do you see how we do this with virtually every thought that we have? You get a headache, you get sick, things don't work out for you the way that you would like to, and immediately you go to the excuse. I'm too old, I'm too scared, I'm too busy, I can't make this happen. And if you stop that and say, what's the reverse of that thought? I'm not scared. I can do this. It's going to be easy. I can afford it. If you say to yourself that you can't afford to do something, and I hear it from people every day, you can't afford to do something, and you can't be 100% certain that you can't afford it because the money could show up. There's a real likelihood that it could show up. Is it more likely that the money will show up if you think the thought that you can't afford it, or if you think the thought that you can afford it? Because if you think the thought that you can afford it, and you assume the feeling of that wish fulfilled, and you go through and marinate in that for 8 hours every night, you're going to now begin to align yourself in a different way. And the universe is going to start providing you with, and you're going to start acting and thinking like God thinks, and before you know it, the money's going to show up. The second question in the paradigm is, where did these thoughts come from? These are all memes. What are memes? Viruses. Not the kind of viruses that are in your computer or in your body, mind viruses. Do they have any substance? No, they're ideas. They've been placed in your mind. What's their purpose? Duplicate, infiltrate, spread. You have been a virus carrier for it. Where did they come from? The answer to that question is very simple. They came from you. Every single one of them came from you. But we carry these things around. What you do is you take total responsibility for every single one of them. You say, yes, I was 3 years old. And when patients would come to me and say, I was only 3 years old. I didn't really choose it. I said, did you know any other 3-year-olds who listened to the same and didn't buy it? Who heard their parents saying the same thing to them, heard their teachers saying that? Yeah. Well, who's responsible for you thinking those things? Well, it's my mother. Mothers take a big rap on this. Big rap on this. I say, so your mother is responsible for the way that you are in your life? Yes. I say, okay, get out of here. I want you to get up. I want you to go home. I want you to go get your mother. I want you to bring her back here. Why? I said, because I'm going to treat her, and you're going to get better. And you can see the absurdity of it, can't you? So if you're not willing to take responsibility, total responsibility, for everything that you are, instead of placing it on anyone or anything or any set of circumstances outside of your life, you signed up for all of that. If you're the middle child, you signed up for it. How do you know? Because you are. If your parents got divorced, that was necessary. You had to go through that. You needed that experience in this lifetime. If you were abandoned, if you lived in an orphanage, if you were sick, if you broke your leg, if you're blind, whatever. As my friend Ram Dass says, everything that you experience in your life is nothing more than your curriculum to God. It's just your curriculum to God. This is the one that you signed up for. So accept it. Accept it all. And I talk quite a bit about that in there. The third of these questions is, what are the payoffs? And basically, the payoffs, every behavior, every excuse that you use has a payoff. Usually it's the avoidance of your dharma. It's usually to avoid the callings of your soul. It's usually to allow other people to be responsible and to run away from it. I go through them all. But the fourth one, and this is one I want to close with. Ask yourself this question. What would my life look like if I couldn't use the excuse that I've been using to explain why my life isn't working the way I want it to work in this dimension? What would my life look like if I couldn't use this excuse? If you simply couldn't say, it's going to be difficult, I can't afford it. What if you just couldn't think that? And as you begin to look at changing those ways of being, you begin to see that you don't have to hang on to them at all. If you couldn't think them, tell yourself you can't. It's no longer possible for me to think that I can't accomplish what I want. I have an imagination. I can assume the feeling of that wish fulfilled. I can place objective attention always on that wish being fulfilled.
Dr. Dyer, welcome. Hello.
Thank you, Summer.
Hey, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Great. So tell me, please, this is a show for me. How do we let go of stress and fear and start living the way we want?
Well, I've talked about this on many occasions, this whole idea of stress being an illusion, because it's just not something that exists in the world, and and it's one of the things that people are always constantly blaming something that doesn't exist on why they're unhappy, and why their blood pressure is up, on why they're getting ulcers, on why they're unhappy in their relationships, on why they can't get things done at work, why they're always being forced to do things that they don't want to do, why there's so much pressure on them, and so on. And the big answer to all of it is always this great big word, stress, or anxiety, or whatever. And the fact is, as I've said, if you take a container and go out into the world with an assignment to bring home a box full of stress, you'll never find any. So what there is in the world, though, are lots and lots of people who are thinking stressful thoughts. And stressful thoughts are, I think the thing to understand about them is that, first of all, is that they originate with us. That you, whoever you are, you're the source of your stress. These are choices that we make to process an unpleasant event in a way that is going to, be invasive in our lives or going to be painful in our lives and so on. But most people, what they do is they blame the outside forces for making their life stressful, which, of course, makes for more and more stress. So what they're doing is waiting for the economy to improve or waiting for their spouse to change his or her behavior, waiting for the kids to grow up, waiting for a new political party in Washington or whatever it might be. And there's this constant belief out there that if only the world were different, if only things weren't the way they were, then I wouldn't have to be so unhappy right now. And it's basically the source of almost all of our problems in all of our relationships. Basically, what people are saying is, if only you, when they're upset, when they're angry, when they're full of stress about something, what they're really saying is, if only you were more like me, then I wouldn't have to be so unhappy right now, or I wouldn't have to be miserable, I wouldn't have to be feeling stressful. But people aren't going to be like you. The world isn't going to be the way you think it should be or ought to be. And what you want to learn to do is get into a different place. And when, of course, the kinds of things that you can do to make that happen, included in such things as meditation, getting quiet, getting peaceful. I've just returned from practically an around-the-world tour and had a lot of speaking engagements that I had to do. In addition to that, I had interviews to do and radio shows to do, and interviewers were sent to my hotel rooms in places like Dublin and London and all over the United States as well. And I can sit there and say to myself that, this is just a lot of stress on me, and why are the people always doing these kind of things? Or I can say to myself, I chose all of this. This is something that I opted for, and if I didn't want it to be here in my life, then I could do something about it. And if I want to change it, I still have that option as well. And I can have the option of just calling whoever it is and just saying I'm not able to do that, or it's too much, or whatever. And that little piece that Debbie Ford had on just before the show started, I think is really relevant. That whole willingness and ability to just say, no, this isn't something that I intend to take on. Thank you very much for offering me that opportunity. And you can do that very peacefully and very calmly. I have a chapter in The Power of Intention. It's chapter 11. And I think it's really very, very helpful to those of you listening. If this is an area of concern in your life, it's called, "It is my intention to live a stress-free, tranquil life." And the fact is that when we have anxiety and when we have stress in our life, basically we've removed ourselves from our source. We've removed ourselves from God, because we come from a peaceful, loving, kind source. We come into this world and we take on these ideas that we have to do certain things and other people's opinions are more important than our own, and we can't say no when people ask us to do things. And this is just a whole bunch of beliefs. And what is a belief? It's just a thought that you keep thinking over and over and over and over again until ultimately it becomes something that you think of as a truth. But it's not necessarily a truth. Many times those thoughts just don't have any basis in truth at all. Like, people won't respect me if I say no, or people will be unhappy with me if I say no. But the fact is that people respect you more when you say no than when you just automatically go ahead and do something that you don't want to do. So what I have done when I got back from this trip, and I always say that if I can get a picture of myself returning back to Maui and returning back to this place that I love so much and being out on the beach and doing my running and practicing and tennis and all of these kind of things, that if I can get that picture in my mind, then what I'm going through at the time is much easier for me to enjoy it. So rather than sitting around, people say, well, you're 6-hour difference in time zones, you're 11-hour time zones off, and I say, I don't do jet lag. I just don't, because jet lag is just a thought that you think over and over again until it becomes a belief that you have to be stressful when you change time zones. So when I change time zones, I just remind myself what my friend Ram Dass said, just be here now, be here in this moment. So I'm now in England, or I'm in Ireland, or I've changed time zones, this is where I am, and I don't allow myself to think a thought that is going to interfere with that. Then I get on an airplane, and instead of getting on an airplane and saying, oh my God, all of these flights, and I've got to go through security, and I've got to go do all of this, I just change my mind about all of that and just decide that this is going to be a pleasant, lovely, nice, kind, fun experience. And to remind myself to not take myself so seriously. And in the Power of Intention, we call this rule number 6, which is don't take yourself so seriously about everything. Another thing that I remind myself of over and over again, and I just got this from a wonderful book written by Susan Monk Kidd back in the early 1990s called When the Heart Waits. She also wrote the Secret Life of Bees, which is a big popular book now. But in this book, When the Heart Waits, she speaks about the value of waiting. And talks a lot about how impatient we all are in our lives. We go to the drugstore and there's one person ahead of us to get our prescription, and we think that we shouldn't be able to slow down, and that we should be there first. And we get in the highway and somebody drives a little bit slow, and we want to get around them right away. You go to the post office, there's 5 people in front of you, and somehow this idea of just waiting every one of you who are mothers know that if you're going to have a baby, there's a waiting period. There's a 9-month period in which you just have to go through and let nature reveal its secrets by and by. And almost as if we've bypassed that whole automatic notion about ourselves that waiting and just being at peace and meditating and getting quiet are bad things, and that we should try to avoid them as much as possible and get to the front and get it fast. And the faster we do it, the better. You can see I even talk faster when I speak about it. So when I got back from this trip and all of that, I practiced that the whole time, and it was the best trip I've ever had in terms of my health. I didn't have any difficulty with, sometimes I get bronchial kinds of things. I changed my whole approach to the whole thing. I got back, and I decided I'm going to take up yoga. So I'm doing Bikram yoga. This is my 3rd day in a row. And going in there and sweating and doing all of these things and trying to stand on one leg and move my other leg behind it and sit down and stretch my leg out to the... I can't do about 70% of what those other people are doing, but nevertheless, I'm there and I'm doing it, and I find that just doing 90 minutes of yoga every day is one of the most peaceful things, and all the things that stressed me out about so many things just aren't even a part of my life any longer. So those are some of my suggestions, and maybe we'll take some calls about them.
Wonderful. The best thing I heard in there is that stress is entirely self-created.
Exactly. There's none in the universe whatsoever, even a hurricane and all of that. It's like it's our reaction to it that causes us to have problems, and we always have a choice in what we think and how we process things.
Absolutely. Dr. Dyer, what do you say we go to Amita, I believe, or I'm probably mispronouncing that. Amita, she's in London, and she's been waiting on the line for you.
Hi there.
Amita, welcome to the show.
Hi, Dr. Dyer.
Hi there. How are you?
I'm very well. You are my guru. You are my mentor.
Oh, well, thank you.
I met you in London a couple of weeks ago, and it's a real honor to be able to speak to you.
Thank you. I love your city. You know what I discovered?
Can't wait to have you back.
You know what a cab driver told me?
Yeah.
He said in 1890, when they had horse and buggies to take people across the town, that you could actually go from one end of London to the other faster by horse carriage than you can today in a cab. So
I believe he's absolutely right.
So many cars.
But no stress. But there's no stress with that. Amita, what's your question for Dr. Dyer today?
My question today is, I've read a lot of your stuff. I've heard so many of your audio tapes, and basically you're in the car, you're in the gym, you're everywhere I go. You're all I listen to.
Oh, well, thank you.
And I tried very hard to practice everything that you teach, but there's just this one thing that I can't seem to get over, and that is there's a person that I suppose I could say that I have a fear of in my life, and wherever she turns up or every time she phones, it's almost like fear grips me, and I think about the past, and I think about things that she's done, and I just can't seem to get over that stage.
Is this a relative?
And, it's a relative of my husband's.
Relative of your husband's.
Mm.
And are you forced to see this person on a regular basis?
Well, it's his sister.
So it's your sister-in-law.
It's my sister-in-law, and we do get on sometimes, but beneath all of that, I suppose.
What kinds of things did she do just very quickly, that you are still hanging on to, that were so troublesome or difficult for you in the past?
It's accumulated over 15 years, so there's a lot to go over.
Yeah, but what is it? Is it all verbal, or did she ever?
It's all verbal, and things like it stems from jealousy on her part, and things have been said. And
here's what I recommend you do: there's that you take out something and you laminate this. And you carry it around with you, literally laminate. You know what I mean when I say laminate?
Yes.
Okay, so you take it to one of those printer places and you get it typed up beautifully, and And I want you to write these words right out on this little card. I want you to carry it with carry it with you wherever you go for like the next 6 months for a year. And on there, I just want you to write the words, what you think of me is none of my business. And just keep reminding yourself every day, just read that particular thought. Whenever the thought of your sister-in-law comes up, whenever her presence comes up, whatever it is what you think of me is none of my business. In other words, you are taking your power back. What you've done is you've given your power away. And by giving your power away, what you've done is you've said that what you think of me is agonizing for me, is upsetting to me, is stressful to me, is painful to me, is any number of these things. And the fact of it is that whatever she thinks of you, and I always say let's say that instead of her thinking and having said all of these terrible things over the last 15 years, what if she came to you one day and said, I used this example before, what if she said, last week you were this, but today you're a car, you're an automobile, and I want to put you down on all fours, and I'm going to put a funnel in your ear, and I'm going to pour gasoline into your ear. Would you be a car if she thought you were a car? Would you be a giraffe if she thought you were a giraffe? And, of course, your answer to that is, of course not. I'm what I am. And the fact is that you are what you are, and what she thinks of you is just, it's her problem. It's something for her to deal with. And it isn't even worth you giving 5 more minutes of your energy to. And as soon as you get that, as soon as you understand that, you'll see her as somebody who has the same kinds of concerns as you do. She came from the same place as you do. You share the same God that she shares. We all come from the same place, and she doesn't know how to be anything other than what she is. And now what will happen is you'll start just surrounding her with kindness and with love and with joy in your heart and forgiveness. And you'll be at peace because you're not making her opinions of you more important than your own opinions of yourself. And that's my advice. That's the best I can do.
What do you say, Amita?
Thank you.
Good?
Thank you. I will definitely go to the shops tomorrow.
Do it.
And I'll get that laminated.
Every time you then look at that little line, and it's a great line. What you think of me is none of my business. That's just not my business. My business is, making somebody else's opinion of you more important than your own opinion of yourself is the cause of your suffering. And as soon as you change that around and make your own opinion of you the most important thing, then you'll actually be able to love her, which will be freeing to you. It'll actually free you up.
Yeah.
All right, Amita.
I have actually tried to do this as well. Mm-hmm. But I feel that I keep going backtrack.
Because it's a habit, and it's just a habitual way of thinking over and over again. You believe that because somebody said nasty things about you, that your responsibility is to think those nasty things back and be upset and be hurt and so on. But again, think about our great spiritual masters. Think of Jesus. It's like, and when someone would say something bad, there's a story. I don't know if I have time. There's a story real quickly of, I think I've told it before on the air, but of the Buddha who had people follow him around who were always criticizing him, always finding fault with him, always, saying terrible things about him. And always he would respond with love, and always he would respond with kindness. And finally the devotee, they couldn't take it anymore. They said, how could you be so kind in the face of all of this negative stuff that just keeps coming at you? And what his response was, he said, when someone offers you a gift and you do not accept that gift, to whom does the gift belong? And what he was really saying is, if someone offers you a gift of their anger or their bitterness or whatever, and you don't accept it, then who owns it? You don't own it. So why would you be upset with something that somebody else owns? And that's what you're doing. You're being upset with something that your sister-in-law owns instead of being happy with what you own.
Wow. Thank you.
Thank you, sweetheart. God bless you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so
very
much. Appreciate your call. Well, Dr. Dyer, we have just enough time to get Randy on the line from Tahoe, Nevada, and bring the question out, Randy, and then Dr. Dyer will answer it when we get back from the break. So welcome to the show.
Oh, it's Brandy.
Oh, Brandy, welcome.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. I have been practicing the power of intention, power of focus and belief, and creating your life by that. And I keep getting roadblocks that when it seems like everything's flowing and it's happening, and I feel like, wow, it's, I'm really on track, it's flowing, then all of a sudden I get these big roadblocks where there's nothing I can do to make it continue to go forward, and it just ends.
You've got to give me an example. What do you mean, real quickly?
it's happened through, in all areas of my life, it happens through, it's happened in relationship, it's happened in a business opportunity.
But what would be an obstacle that you just can't overcome? What would that be? I'm trying to think of what that might be.
Well, like, for instance, with the business partnership, everything was flowing, and then all of a sudden we were kind of getting into contract negotiations, and then there was just all of a sudden miscommunication that seemed to be happening that made
Hold it right there,
okay.
Brandy. So you get into these business kind of things, and these obstacles present, miscommunications occur, and you think that means what to you when that happens? That what you want to create isn't happening?
Yeah, I'm getting now discouraged that all this stuff that I've been studying and trying to live my life by doesn't really work because it's not been working for me. In the past 3 years, I've had 3 years of this happening consistently. It just kind of, everything just seems to blow up right after it's flowing, and then it just stops and it blows up.
Does it ever occur to you that you are attracting exactly what it is that you were putting out there? That this is not the universe doing that? That this is you doing that? I mean, I'm not like asking you to blame. I'm just saying it's what keeps showing up in your life. So the independent variable here is you. It keeps showing up. You keep maybe anticipating it, expecting it, not believing you're worthy of it, thinking that this is the way things always are going to go for you, whatever it might be, and there's almost like an anticipation that when we're going to get close to the edge, but we're never going to be able to jump in and really make this happen.
Well, I'm only getting to that point right now after my third year and the final straw of...
Yeah, but I mean, as these things have happened in the past, have you processed them in such a way that you say, I needed to go through that? Like when you go through a divorce, or when you go through a bankruptcy, or when you lose a job, or when there's an accident or whatever, most people start, telling themselves, this is awful, this shouldn't have happened, but if you're at the place that I'm speaking to you from the power of intention, you would be saying to yourself, of course, this is what I needed to go through, that there's no mistakes in the universe, that my plan doesn't work, God's plan does, I'm going to listen to that one. I'm not going to judge it, I'm not going to tell myself that it should be something different. And it's like, and then you begin to attract an energy that says there's no obstacle that could possibly show up as this thing unfolds that could prevent the best outcome for me. There's nothing that could prevent the best outcome for me. I may not know what that best outcome is, but it's on its way, and I expect it to continue. And it's like, and you create that kind of a mindset. And all I can say to you, Brandy, is that it works for me. I just don't anticipate things not working out. And I have some things, even right now in my own life, that haven't worked out exactly the way that I wanted them to work out. And I know that there's a greater plan at work here. And it's like I get to a place where I just suspend that, and I get into that thing that I was talking about at the beginning of the show, where I allow myself to be in a state of waiting and in a state of anticipation and a state of joy of not trying to push the river and not trying to make something bigger happen, and not tell myself that something terrible has happened in the way of an obstacle. Then the obstacles disappear, and then you get past that, and you realize, so this is why. This is exactly why. I mean, 5 years ago, I was in just a miserable state in a relationship and what's going on and so on, and I thought perhaps that I could never be happy again. And today I'm deliriously happy, and I look back on what happened 5 years ago, and I understand exactly what was going on and why it had to go on, and I'm in a better relationship with everybody, including the person from 5 years ago and now and everything. And at the time, I just wasn't able to see the bigger picture, and that's what I'm asking you to look at. Look at the bigger picture. Don't give up. The source that created you is what's behind all of this. Be completely at peace with that, and whatever you want or looking for, anticipate that it's coming rather than that something's going to blow it up. That's my advice.
I hope that something does happen.
What about this relationship thing? What happens that you said something of relationship?
Well, I felt like I met that right person, and that we were brought together at the right time in the right place, and then all of a sudden the relationship seemed to change. He seemed to change, and it turned into this wonderful, beautiful relationship to a verbally abusive one that I just could not, have in my life.
Yeah, and you can't see the greatness in that and the joy in that and what you were taught there and so on. I mean,
I can't see the greatness of why, each relationship seems to, you think it's right, and it just seems to not be.
Yeah, except that when you are in what you think is a beautiful relationship, and then it turns out that somebody becomes verbally abusive, it's like it teaches you so much about entering into those kind of relationships in the future, meaning attracting those kinds of people. And before long, you won't even be those kind of people. You won't even allow them to show up in your life. You know, it's like as soon as that the first little hint of verbal abuse that just starts to show up, the first little hint of disrespect or physical abuse or any of it, the first little hint of it, you are so now in touch with who you are and what you anticipate and what you are worthy of and what you're going to have in your life, and you have such a strong knowing about that you just very gently just move on and say, well, thank you, God. Thank you for letting me see this here right now in this moment, and off you go. And you don't have to go through this long period of suffering that you go through now. It's all part of a great learning process, and the right person's on its way. You just have to open up a door and allow that person in. We've got to move on.
Okay.
Yes,
okay, thanks,
Randy,
Randy.
it's time for us to go. But thank you so much for your call. That was a lot of good information in there about a couple different situations for her. What do you say we have Natalie on the line from Montreal, Canada? And she's got a question for you, too, as well.
Hi, Natalie.
Hi, Dr. Dyer.
How are you, my dear?
I'm fine, and how are you?
How are things in Montreal?
In Montreal, they're going fine.
Good.
Yeah, beautiful weather.
That's great.
So, the reason I'm calling is I'm having a lot of problems because of stress in my life. My father was sick over the summer. The operation went very well, but ever since then, his mental aspect has really degraded. He's practically driving us up the walls, my mother and myself. And we don't know how to deal with him anymore because he gets upset if it's too cold in the house and he wants to put up the heat. He'll even call the police. He's done all kinds of things that we really do not know what to do anymore.
Is it a dementia? Has he got a form of dementia of some kind? Is he?
We don't know because now they're talking about maybe getting psychiatric evaluation done because last night he called the police. So my mother has a resource person that she can talk to, a social worker. And when she called her today, she goes, I say we're going to get him evaluated and all that because he's really draining her.
Yeah, and when someone gets to that point, how old is he?
He's 76. And the worst part is that he's the one who has basically given up because his operation went very well. He has no reason. The doctors say, no, everything's fine. You shouldn't have all these problems that you say you're having.
It's hard to get inside of his head and understand what's going on from his perspective. I mean, especially after having had surgery. That's a very traumatic thing, and it may be something he may believe that something has been rearranged inside of him that is making him this way, even if there's absolutely no reason for it whatsoever. At any rate, we can't get inside of his head and change it, but we can certainly look at what your options are, and in addition to getting the evaluation and so on, I would really very strongly recommend that you go within yourself and make an absolute conscious decision that you are not going to allow yourself to be emotionally manipulated by the behavior of this man.
Because that is what he is doing. He is really emotionally manipulating us.
Yeah, absolutely. So you just make up your mind that's not going to happen. So when he starts behaving in these irrational ways and starts making these accusations, you let him know, just like you would do with a child that's having a temper tantrum, that this is not behavior that you're going to tolerate. You do it with love, you do it kindness, and you leave the room. You walk out. You say, and each time you condition yourself with this person that every time he behaves in these ways, what he's going to be doing is sending you away, and then you leave, and then you come back. And eventually, he will get it, that this kind of behavior is not something that is going to keep you around and make you unhappy and make you miserable and manipulate you. He'll get that this is behavior that's sending him away. That's the beginning. And you do this all up and down. You just surround him with love, as much possible love as you can. Surround him with forgiveness, and make your own conscious decision about what you're going to be.
We've got William on the line. He also has a question for you, and I believe it may be about communication, just like we're talking about. William, welcome to the program.
Hi, William.
How you doing, Dr. Dyer?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Where are you calling from?
Ogden, Utah.
Oh, great.
That's
Welcome.
in the Rocky Mountains.
Yeah, beautiful place. I've been up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question for you, if I could.
Sure.
Well, I've retired as a psychotherapist, and I teach at a local university, and I read your book, The Power of Intention, and that's a remarkable piece of literature.
Thank you very much.
I followed your career also and watched you grow and become the kind of human being you are. And one of the things I'm struggling to do is twofold. Number one, start doing some seminars to help individuals and couples with their relationships. And then secondly, to write a book about a concept that hit me a while back when I was teaching a domestic violence class. My question is, how did you get started? And if you could give me some ideas that might circumvent some unnecessary suffering, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a hard one though, because nobody can, everybody has to sort of follow their own path. I took a very unusual path when I got started. I've always been extremely, excessively, probably obsessively committed to what it is that I'm going to create, and I've never let any obstacles ever come. That's why I always have a difficulty with people calling me up and telling me about all the obstacles that show up in their life, because to me they were always just more indications of what I hadn't been willing to do yet. Because I don't ever believe it's not what you're willing to do, it's what's on your list of what you're unwilling to do, and that has to be a list that has nothing on it. And so for me, it was when I wrote my very first book, which was a counseling textbook, group counseling for personal mastery. I sent the entire manuscript out. I made 100 copies of it on a Xerox machine and sent it out to 100 different publishers, and I got 99 rejections, and I got one little place. It was called Educational Technology Publications in Englewood Cliffs, California, and they said yes, they would like to publish it, and so that was my very first publication. And when I wrote Your Erroneous Sounds, about 6 years later, I went in and talked to different publishers in New York, and I bought up the first 3 printings myself, because they didn't have any plans for it to go beyond just the first printing, and so I bought them up and I stored them in my ex-wife's garage. And circulated them myself and took them in a van and went across the country, and I literally spent 2 years on the road going from city to city. Did you ever see Coal Miner's Daughter?
I did.
Wasn't that a wonderful, I mean, that whole, and that was reminded me so much of what I was doing, going from little radio station to little radio station and delivering the books myself and going to the bookstores and having the time of my life, literally. It was a very joyful experience, and I never asked anybody else to write anything or to go any endorsements or anything like that. I just totally threw myself into it. It's what in Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill talks about having a burning desire, which is different than a regular desire. A burning desire is one that won't go out. It's inside you, and you just absolutely know, so that everything that you attempt to do, if it doesn't seem to be working out the way you want it, you just cross that off the list and say, it's like that old line from Thomas Edison when he was trying 25,000 different ways to invent a light bulb, and he still didn't have it. And here was the most famous inventor in the world, and they asked him the question, how does it feel to have failed 25,000 times? And his response was classic. He said, failed? He said, today I know 25,000 ways not to make a light bulb, not to make a battery. And I just kept learning what not to do. And so I never think of obstacles as things that are bad. I always think of them, okay, one more thing to cross off the list. That one's not going to work, And the other thing is, I started out doing it in very small places, like up in Port Washington, New York, at the Educational Assistance Center. I gave a lecture every Monday night. I was a professor also at St. John's University in New York, and Monday nights were free for me. So I just offered a course, and like 12 people showed up the first time. Then we did it for 4 weeks, and I think they paid $5. After the 4 weeks were up, they told a bunch of people about it. They wanted to continue the course. We had about 30 people show up. And the conclusion of all of that is 3 years later in Port Washington, New York, on Monday night at Schreiber High School, we had 1,200 people, each who were paying $20 for a 4-week seminar to come and listen. And it became like an institution there in the town. And then it went from there to bigger cities, in Manhattan and then all across the world. But it's like you start out and you give a talk. If 3 people show up at a phone booth, give your first seminar there. Don't have anything on your unwilling list. That's my best advice.
Hey, thank you so much.
Thank you, my friend.
Continued success for you.
Thank you, and God bless you. You live up there in a beautiful, beautiful part of the world.
Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, William. We have Matt now on the line. He's calling from Arizona. Matt, welcome to the program.
Yeah, hi.
Hi, Matt.
Hey.
How you doing?
And what is your question for Dr. Dyer today?
I've identified my ego, and I actually have conversations with it frequently.
Good.
but it constantly wants to be in charge, and it sometimes lets me function. I've learned that the best way is to stay on top of my ego is to watch it, but it doesn't like this, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, and in fact, it's frantically always trying to, distract me, from doing this.
Right.
You, Ram Dass, and others have advocated actually the death of the ego in order to remove that control.
Right.
But I have this sense that the ego does actually play an important role.
Yeah, I used to think that too. I'm not sure about that. I've sort of changed my mind on that because the thing about the ego, the most important thing to remember about the ego is that it's an illusion. It's really the false self. I mean, that's what all of the great spiritual masters, that's what Patanjali was teaching like 4,000 years ago. It's the false self, the real self, that Lao Tzu said that is real, which never changes. So the only part of you that's real is the part that's eternal. And everything else is an illusion, including all of those beliefs that you have about, what your ego is, and all of it's just like you're really slaying something that doesn't exist in the first place. If you just recognize that, then you'll be much more at peace with it. But we're going off the air here. I can tell that in about 30 seconds. So.
Sure. Okay. Well,
Sorry,
thank you very
Matt.
much.
We'll have to
thanks,
wrap
Matt.
that up.
Great questions, and maybe I'll meet with you. We can all get together on Maui over here. It'd be great.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Sounds great. God bless you.
Appreciate your call, Matt. That's a great idea for a show. How about a whole show about the ego and tackling that?
Anytime. You tell me,
monster.
Summer. You're in charge. Bring your FX47 with you, and we'll do it.
All right. Well, Dr. Dyer, thank you as always for being with us today. We look forward to having you on air again next Monday, same time, same place.
I'll be here.
Dr. Dyer, before we get to calls, though, I just wanted to share a quick email from one of our listeners that I just thought was really great. She was listening to the show Curriculum of Your Life, and there was a woman talking about her chronic health problems. And your question was, what if we didn't have the ability to think the thought, I am sick, how would we then feel? And this question made her think about her son. He was born very premature 25 years ago, and he has some physical and mental challenges. Although he has limited ability to communicate verbally, he can get his basic wants and needs across. And she says she's always marveled at the fact that when he would have anything from the flu to surgeries, he would just happily rest and sleep until he felt better and always recovered quicker than a typical person would. And there was never a complaint. Doctors are not yet sure, she says, what is specifically wrong with him, but he always responds to just rest, and he enjoys music, and that's kind of how he heals himself, and never has the thought, I am sick. He never acknowledges it or really accepts it. He just kind of goes along and then seems to kind of bring himself back into good health. And she says, I realized Dr. Dyer helped me with that one question. To see the way my son handles himself is a beautiful example of the gracefulness of a pure soul. Instead of the sad feeling that he doesn't understand what's going on, he absolutely does understand, and so does Dr. Dyer. So she just wanted to say thank you for your contributions to Hay House and for having her think the thought that he is well. So I just thought that was sweet.
That's a wonderful letter, and the concept is really. It's basically the concept behind a book I did a couple of years ago called "Excuses Be Gone."
Yes.
Which is what I have a paradigm in there, and one of the questions in the paradigm is, what if you couldn't think the thoughts that you have that tell you that you can't do this, or this is impossible, or that you have to be poor, or that you can't get that job, or that you're infirm, or that you're weak, or that you're sick, and so on. What if you just couldn't think that thought? And it's interesting. I've talked before about this, the cleanse that I was on, and I just did another 3 days with my daughter Summer, who's here.
Yes, the Master Cleanse.
Yeah, the Master Cleanse. I just went back on it for 3 days just to sort of support her with it. She had taken up smoking at one time, and she's getting rid of all of that and really getting herself very, very healthy. And I was noticing wherever I go for a walk or anything, I see people walking by a restaurant, and they take a great big cheeseburger with bacon on it or something. They go to take a bite of it, and this isn't something that I've put in my body probably in 20 years. But when you're going through a cleansing process, the whole process becomes mental. And what it makes me realize is that virtually everything in our life is mental. What kinds of thoughts do we think? And I'm watching people put this great big greasy thing into their mouth and taking a bite of it and drinking a great big soda, and, they're 50, 60, 70 pounds overweight and so on. And I'm thinking, oh, man, that looks so good. And I'm thinking, what kind of a mental thing is that? And I begin to realize that it's like we become what we think about.
And, most of the difficulties that we have, I think about people who out there who are overweight. And I think, what if you couldn't look in a mirror? And what if you couldn't step on a scale? And what if you couldn't think the thought, that I'm overweight, that I'm fat, that I'm unattractive, that I'm lazy, that whatever it is, all the things that are associated with that. And so I think what she was saying there is very, very relevant, is like, begin to look at and say to yourself, well, what if I couldn't think these thoughts, that I can't make things happen, that I can't manifest things? And the only thought that you could think of, with God, all things are possible, and I am connected to God, I am a piece of God. What if that was the only thing that you could think? And then begin to challenge yourself and just say, okay, then I'm going to not give myself permission or the right to think thoughts that don't work for me. Like she was talking about her son. It's like, what if he just absolutely could only think, I am well, I am content, I am happy. And that's why, so many people, when they go to the hospitals, they go to doctors and so on, and they have all of these tests that are run, and then they look at all of the numbers, and they look at all of the things, and they start to think about all of the things that are going to go wrong with their body. And I tell them, what if you couldn't think those thoughts? What if you could only think that I'm healthy, I am content, I am peaceful, I am strong, I am God, I am connected to God, all things are possible. And if that was, you had been conditioned to only think that way from the time that you were just a child, your whole physical world would change.
Right.
And that really leads me into a little bit about what all of the controversy and all of the discussion about the Supreme Court decision of the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, John Roberts, siding with, quote, the liberal wing of the Supreme Court and upholding the individual mandate and the health care law that there's been so much fighting over and so on. And I think about, what is all of this controversy about? What is everybody all upset about? What is it that government's going to come in and do this and do that? I'm 72 years old, so I've been on a program that is called Medicare for 7 years now. And I go to whatever doctor I want to go to, if I want to go. Nobody comes in and tells me anything that I can do or that I can't do. It's a very simple system, and it's something that we put into place that every civilized country in the world has for every single one of their citizens. Well, we finally have it just for people, over the age of 65 or so on, and also for people who are, incapacitated. And it's never been a problem, and everybody supports it. And all of the people in the Republican Party who are opposed to this health care, certainly don't want to get rid of Medicare and so on. And then I think about all of the people up there arguing that we're going to repeal this and we're going to repeal. Here's the Speaker of the House, John Boehner, is up there saying we have to throw this whole law out and it's socialized medicine. And meantime, he has voted for himself a wonderful package of government subsidized and taking care of health care for himself. And every single person in that Congress has a form of what they call, quote, socialized medicine, which somehow there's something terribly wrong with that word. And all of these people who are voting on whether or not the rest of the country can just be free from the worry. The thing that concerns me the most about this, Diane, is the element of cruelty that is inherent in this argument that we have to, let's toss this all out and let's all start over again, which really means let's get rid of it, let's never have it again, and let's just say, we got a wonderful healthcare system in this country, except for the 50 or 60 million people who don't have healthcare, who, when they find out that they have a brain tumor, or when they have an accident, or when they get some kind of serious debilitating disease where they need continuous coverage, they don't have insurance, they can't get insurance, the hospitals won't take them, and they just basically die and live in this, system where they're just so worried and so filled with fear. It just seems to me like an absence of compassion. And I was so impressed with the Supreme Court Justice, with Justice Roberts coming along and saying this is a signature thing that has happened in this, under President Obama. I think it has the same kind of magnitude as when the Social Security became something, when the Voting Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act, the Medicare Act, all of these things that are just something that is accepted as, if you're born in the United States of America, one of the greatest countries in the world, supposedly, you should at least be able to live, every citizen ought to be able to live free from the worry that they, that they can't get the kind of medical attention that they want. And this is the direction that we're moving. And I was watching on Bill Maher show on Friday night, there was a woman on there who was saying this is only really the very beginning, that we are in an untenable situation. We're in a place where healthcare costs are just going through the roof. They were using the example of somebody on the panel had gone into a hospital, and they got their bill, and they got a bill for, those little packets of Kleenex that they give you when you're in the hospital?
Right, like $20 a piece for that.
$28. $28 they were billed for a little packet of Kleenex. And Bill Maher was saying, where does this go? You can go over to any drugstore and get that for 49 cents. Where does the $27.50 go? It's the whole thing is just so out of control that bringing it back and having the same thing that we're offering for all of our citizens in this country, which is health care for everybody over the age of 65, why not offer it for everybody? Why not just figure out a way, whatever it takes to make this happen, let's just get together and do it. And when the congressmen get together and say, we can't do this, when the Republicans particularly say, we're going to throw this thing all out, then if you're so opposed to socialized medicine, then stop taking it yourself. You voted for it for yourself. You gave yourself the best medical care that anyone could ever have, and you voted for it for life, for you, for your family. Even if you just serve 2 years in Congress, you get lifetime medical insurance and everything taken care of, paid for in this, quote, socialized means, by the government. So
right,
anyway.
Why shouldn't the rest of us be offered the same ability to do that? And I've been without insurance before in various jobs and had to try to pray nothing happened. And it really is it's a horrible feeling, when you have to go to the drugstore and you have to pay the full price for your prescriptions. You can't get any break. And,
or something happens to you, like my friend Terry Gordon, who's got a book coming out with Hay House this is July now, this month, called No Storm Lasts Forever. He's a cardiologist, a brilliant man, a very good friend of mine. It's a wonderful book. I really recommend it. When the book comes out, I want to put Terry on the show. But his son was, just got into a terrible automobile accident and was rendered a quadriplegic, and he's going to need medical care for the rest of his life. What do we do with people like this? Do we just say, we'll just let them die, or just, we're not going to give them the care that they need? The ability to offer insurance and a worry-free life when it comes to medical expenses and so on is something that ought to just come with being a citizen of the country, whatever it takes to make it all happen. And I just think that they've done such a masterful job of convincing a whole lot of people that there's something terrible going on here and that the government's going to come in and that there's going to be death panels and all of this stuff like the Sarah Palins and so on. All of that, we ought to just dismiss all of that and say, look, let's offer complete medical care to everyone in our country and get these medical costs down. The people in Washington are the ones who are going to have to make this happen. And if they say we don't know how to do it, we can't afford it, we say, well, then you managed to figure out a way to do it for yourselves. Now go into another room and don't come out until you figure out a way to manage it for everyone else. By the way, for the people who are paying for your insurance.
Exactly. They need to send you up there. Dr. Dyer goes to Washington.
If I went to Washington, I would just say to all of them, all right, this is the room. You're all going in there, and you figured out whatever it is that you did in there to figure out how to give yourselves complete medical care for life and your families. You don't come out of that room until you figured out how to make this happen for everybody else, particularly because those are the people who are paying the bills for the health insurance that you've given yourself.
Exactly. Exactly. I agree. Very interesting. Anyway. It was definitely the topic all weekend. I was at a party. Everybody was talking about it. So people are very passionately discussing this whole thing. Brings up a lot of feelings in a lot of people.
There's so many, there's so much mythology around all of this. There's so many rumors about it and all of that. And basically it just gets down to a political gambit. That's what it really is. One party doesn't want the other party to be in power, so they're doing everything that they can. And nobody could, people, as I say, they've come to, I've heard it said over and over again that the main focus of the Republican Party now in Washington is to make sure that the president does not get reelected. That ought not to be the main focus of the people who have been elected to Congress. The main focus ought to be how can we govern and provide the services for our people, not how can we just stop somebody from becoming president.
It's very frustrating.
They just cited the U.S. Attorney General Holder for contempt of Congress over this gun thing down in Mexico. And I said, I think the whole country's in contempt of Congress. I'm certainly one of them, that is. That's my
true.
my rant for today.
That's Dr. Dyer's soapbox.
Right.
Very good. Well, we've got some time to grab calls here. And
sure.
Did you want to start in Toronto, where you just were?
I was just there. Let's see who's there.
Let's go there. Catherine on line 1, and we will start with her. And Catherine, welcome to the show. You're on with Dr. Dyer.
Hello, Diane. Hello,
Hi.
Dr. Dyer. How are you?
Hi, Catherine.
Speaking to you today is a wish fulfilled, so thank you.
Good.
I really appreciate it.
Were you in the audience? Were you in the audience last week?
I was. I found it very humorous and very moving, so thank you for that.
Oh, good. You got a few laughs?
Yes.
You saw my brother up there. What did you think of that?
I got a chance to shake his hand. And
did you?
I just wanted to tell him how perfect and enough it was in terms of what he spoke, because he almost started to go to an apologetic place. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted him to know that it was very moving.
Yeah, let me just say 1 minute here before we get into Catherine, your call, was that my brother David has just written a book called From Darkness to Light. And he tells the story. I mean, he was an alcoholic for over 50 years. He was very, very reserved and shy. He won the Bronze Star for bravery in Vietnam and 2 tours of duty there. He was basically an atheist and a very withdrawn person. And he got Parkinson's disease when he was 68 years old. That was like 4 years ago. And everything in his life changed. The Parkinson's disease, what you would think of as this is supposedly a diagnosis of an incurable disease, and it's just going to get progressively worse and so on. And it turned everything around in his life. He found God. He stopped drinking. He stopped smoking. He started writing. He's now written a book and telling a bit about his story and the relationship that he's had with me. And I had him on stage there in Toronto, and it was really, really a very, very beautiful moment. And he's just been flying. He's been in the clouds. He can't even believe people. He said people were coming up to me, and they just wanted me to hug them. They told me that I was inspiration. He said, I can't even believe that. I mean, his whole life changed, and it's like so many of the things that come into our life that we think are terrible, and what an awful thing to have Parkinson's disease at the age of 68. It was largely from him being in Vietnam and being exposed to Agent Orange. And it turns out that this storm, this horrible thing that supposedly happened to him in his life, was one of the greatest gifts that he was ever given. He found God. He found a way to get over his addictions. He started writing, and he's the happiest guy in the world these days. So, and I had him up there on stage. So
that's great.
Book is wonderful. Yeah.
And he's a sweetheart.
He is. He's a sweet man. Yeah.
And Catherine, what was your question?
Yeah, you mentioned during your talk that, we must be what we can be. And you said obese people are not what they can be, that they don't treat their body with reverence. And then, of course, Sky went on to talk about the greatest gift is to love yourself. And
right.
I'm a weight loss coach, and what I do is not about nutrition or fitness. It's about teaching conscious weight loss, which is like the intellectual, the emotional, the spiritual clarity that we bring to these things. And it's grounded in unconditional love. So my question for you, the cleansing and the weight loss that you experienced recently, you talked about a greater clarity that brought to you, and I'm assuming that that's serving your writing now in a big way. How would you articulate this greater clarity for others who just don't know what they're missing? And then the second part of my question is, what's your thought on spiritual leaders who are overweight or obese?
Well, there's such a conflict in this because, and out of one side of my mouth, I say that you are not your body. And so therefore what you are is formless. I tell people often, the life inside of you is really God. That your body is, if you weigh your body when you're alive and then instantly you die and life leaves your body and you weigh it, it weighs the same. So that your life, that whatever it is that leaves it, is weightless. It's formless. But we all emerge, on the other side of my mouth, I say that our bodies are our temples. These are the things that house our soul. And if these bodies are being deteriorated or they're being poisoned or they're being overfed or they're being misused in some way, not exercised properly, not fed properly, then you don't have any place else to live. God leaves this physical domain, if you will, and you are incarnated here into a physical body so that when you return to optimum health, when you return to perfect health, the place from which you originated. I mean, yesterday I was out walking and And I saw two people walking towards me, and they both were about maybe 125 pounds overweight at least. Rolls of fat rolling off of them, hard to walk, could see over breath. Their faces were flushed, red, and so on. And both of them were carrying from Subway a soft drink that must have had 32 ounces in it. It must have been a quart of either Coca-Cola or some kind of sugary drink. And I was just watching and watching them as they were walking, barely, having difficulty walking, but balancing this bag of food with this great big thing of pure sugar that they were pouring into their bodies. And I was thinking, if you only knew, if you could only sense inside of you that there is a place that is craving for you to just drink pure water, for you to rid yourself of this mental training that you have had, that you have to pour this kind of stuff into your body. Because we all come from a place of well-being. We come from a place of perfect health. And when you get back to that place of well-being, when you return, as I've quoted T.S. Eliot many times on the show, and said, we shall not cease from exploration, but at the end of all of our exploring will be to return to the place from which we originated and to know it for the first time, to know it. I think he might have been talking about death there, that when we die, we'll return to the place. But I've said in Wishes Fulfilled that I believe that we can experience returning to that place without having to leave our bodies. And when you do return to it, when you begin to exercise yourself regularly, when you begin to watch the kind of food that you place into your body, when you begin to drink more water, when you begin to have healthier thoughts, there's a new clarity because you're now reconnected to your source. You're more aligned with God than you've ever been before. And this is the clarity that I feel. You're absolutely right. I feel it when I'm writing. I feel it in every moment of my life. We got to go, Catherine. We're going to get a break here, I just heard. I want to send you a copy of Experiencing the Miraculous. Have you looked at that?
No, I would love to receive it. Thank you.
Yeah, it's from Assisi and Lourdes and Medjugorje, and I hope I answered your question, and I'm not sure if I did, but it's really just about connecting back to Source and feeling God in everything you do, and that's perfect health. There's no obesity there.
And we'll go right back to calls. We've got some great people lined up here, so let's go to Cheyenne, Wyoming. There's an interesting place on line 10, and let's check in with Roy.
Hello, Dr. Dyer. It's Roy Rogers again.
Hi, Roy. How are you? How's Trigger?
Doing okay. Trying to stay out of the rain and everything. We're getting a little bit of rain right now. We need it over here in this part of the country. You heard about all the wildfires to the south of us.
I have.
All in Colorado, which have been very devastating.
A lot of prayers going out. They have a dear friend. In fact, our friend Nancy Levin, who works, of course, for Hay House and has written her own little book of poetry, is in Boulder, and I was speaking to her, and she was standing outside of her apartment, and she could actually feel the heat of the flames. And I told her just sort of facetiously that I would put an end to that, and that night they got about 30% rain that night, so I took total credit for that. I don't take credit for the fires, but I take credit for the rain.
Anyway, I heard another caller tell you one time that you'd actually helped bring rain or something to them when it was last year, I think, when I first started listening to your show. I think it was one of the first shows I heard. So
yeah.
Maybe your biography ought to be called The Rainmaker or something like that.
That's interesting because when I was in Bali, I think I've told this story on here, but we were way out in a remote part of the island years ago with my wife and two of my children when they were just little. And we walked into this village, and there was a man laying there on the ground looking up at the sky. And this is right on the equator, practically. And I asked, who is he? What does he do? And they said, he's the rainmaker. He brings rain. And he doesn't pray for rain. He prays rain. Greg Braden wrote about that in one of his books. So, yeah. Anyway, what's on your mind, my friend from Cheyenne?
I told the call screener I wanted to ask a question about how it might feel sometimes when you feel maybe when it comes to being inspired and maybe feeling at a point where you're broken. But you kind of answered that question when you were talking to another person. You kind of just gave me just what you said in your last call about just, what you were saying. And so I think I'd like to change it if I might. And it's something else that's kind of bothering me because it's something that you talk about a lot. And I watch your PBS special. Whenever it's on PBS, it's on a lot. And if I happen to be catching it, I'll just listen to the audio just to bring in the positive vibes. But if, you're talking about Anita Moorjani and death, and you've written about this and how, when people die, it seems like they go to this feeling of absolute love and peace and everything like that. Okay, I guess my question might be, I guess it might just be more of a philosophical one, because I kind of think about this too. I know, because if people talk about how great it feels to be dead, because I've never had any experience like that, if it's so great to be on that other side, why then are we here? Is it a curse then that we're here? Because, we have all these problems we have to deal with. And wouldn't it just be easier if we just could all just be in peaceful and all feeling light and feeling good all the time without having to have this human experience? We could all just be in the netherworld feeling peaceful, and there would be no problems at all. And sometimes I kind of wish that too, because it's like it'd just be easier that way.
Yeah. Well, Roy, I'll tell you, you asked the question that from philosophers from Socrates and Plato to Descartes and Jesus and Buddha and everyone else has been addressing, like, what are we doing here? What is our purpose? And why even show up in the first place? One of Anita's, Anita Moorjani, who's the author of Dying to Be Me, had a near-death experience. And I wrote the foreword to that book, and it's truly one of the most remarkable books that I've ever read in my life. I recommend it to everyone, and I pass it out to a lot of people. I bought several hundred copies myself, and I pass it out to anybody who's dealing with this whole issue of cancer and death and near death and so on. And it's I think it's going to be destined to be a classic. But she is being interviewed in London, and she's asked the question, why were you the lucky one? Why were you the one because no one who's ever been at that end stage of cancer that she experienced for over 5 years and was just that close to death has ever come back, let alone come back and be cancer-free and out there walking around talking about it. And she said, I didn't want to go back into my body. And my sister-in-law, Marilyn, had this experience back in 1971 when she was in a head-on collision, and her body was all broken up and her face was all torn apart. All the bones in her face were broken. She had internal bleeding, and she was on life support for 17 days in ICU and so on. And she said she didn't want to get back into her body as well. She said she was in such a place that you just described, Rory, of just divine bliss and peacefulness and so on. And why would anyone want to get back into their bodies? And Anita's response was, I always loved it when she said, because people ask her, look, my sister had the same thing you had, or my mother had this, or my wife had that, and they died. Why were you the lucky one? And she said, maybe they were the lucky ones, and I wasn't the lucky one. Maybe I had a dharma. I had something to come in here into this world and to accomplish. And then when I accomplished it, I can't do it as long as I'm not, it's not back in this body. And she felt, my sister-in-law had 3 children that she felt that she had to get back into her body to take care of. Anita felt that she had a very important message. She wanted to talk to people about being love, to being in a state of love. But to the question that you are asking, which is why are we here in the first place, it's just the great mystery, Roy. I mean, it's you have to just live in that mystery. I have no idea. I mean, I've read many books about this, and and many of the spiritual masters, especially when they speak about, why did God even create this world? And why not just stay in a place of a non-form bliss? Period. Some of them say that God just got bored, with all of that, and just wanted to create an opportunity to express it in in a physical form as well as in a spiritual form. I don't know the answer to that. I can't even pretend to know the answer to it, but I do know that we're here. We did incarnate. This is the physical body. These things that I'm looking at trees and the ocean and the grass and the birds and the flowers, in the room that I'm sitting in and so on. And it's real, and yet there's the paradox that it's that it's not real at all, that it's all illusion, that we're all spirit. So if we're going to be here for 100 years or so, the whole thing is just be in a state of grace and peace and love and do the best you can with it. I don't try to make any more out of it than that. What do you think?
As I've gotten older, since I've been 39, I've just been feeling, I guess, a little bit older. It's kind of like, anytime I feel a little bit, I get a little ache or pain, or I'm thinking, oh God, is this the start of something, or like, it's like that one movie, Solitary Man, where they were middle-aged people in their 40s or 50s or something, and they were saying the best news you can get from a doctor is like, we caught it early. And yesterday I was buying something at the store, and this lady asked me if I wanted my senior citizen discount, and I'm only 45. And I'm like, I guess maybe I thought a little bit more about death, because it's like it's not like I haven't seen it instantly to where like a near-death experience and stuff, and it's like I'm thinking, man, it just seems like it's just a slow, gradual, kind of torturous thing to this point, and I guess that's why it's been kind of bugging me also.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. The best thing to do with that, Roy, is just turn it around and just say to yourself, God is love, and we come from God. God is the source of all things, so that we are love. And so you just love every aspect. It's like I was telling the story of my brother David, standing up there in front of several thousand people in Toronto, and being able to speak when he couldn't before, and being able to say, I love my Parkinson's disease. I've been diagnosed with leukemia. I love this leukemia. It has done so many wonderful things for me, and it has given me an opportunity to serve so many other people who are so terrified and so frightened and scared and thinking about dying. It has brought me Anita Morjani. It brought her into my life, and this person who has now written a book that I think can bring peace and love to a lot of people. And just let the rest of it take care of itself, because when it's time for life to leave your body, it will, and it can't. The part of you that is really real, that is authentic, was never born. It never dies. It's infinite. So see yourself as an infinite being, and just see this is just part of the dance. That's all.
Well,
Gotta go, my friend.
Yeah,
thanks, Roy.
God
God bless you. Yeah, you're very welcome. Let's send you a copy of Experiencing the Miraculous. Leave your address there. It's the wonderful tour that we did to Assisi, Lourdes, and Medjugorje. It's a really beautiful program. I'm very, very
okay,
proud
I'll
of it.
check with you later in the year.
Thanks, Roy. Say hi to Trigger and Kimosabi.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
That would be funny.
Kimosabi, Nancy? I mean, Nancy.
Nancy.
Diane. I'm just talking about Nancy. Do you know?
Kimosabi, was that the Lone Ranger? No, that was Tonto.
That's what Tonto always said, Kimosabi.
Oh, right. That's my friend,
Yeah,
right? Something like that.
You're not old enough to remember the Lone Ranger.
I remember who he is, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. Where should we go next? How about let's go to Gina in Dalton, Georgia on line 1. And Gina,
Hello.
Thanks for holding. You're on with Dr. Dyer.
Hello.
Hi, Gina.
Hi, Dr. Dyer. It's such an honor to speak with you. Thank you so much for taking my call.
Oh, you're very welcome. Nice to hear from you.
I'll have to give you just a little bit of backstory to understand my question more. About 3 years ago, I started going through a bit of a, awakening, or I started to go through an awakening. I've had many life-altering experiences from childhood on up into my 30s. I'm 39 now. And I started to assimilate all those problems that I have, and I don't have the victim mentality as much anymore. And I've been able to make use of, find the good in all those situations. And over the past year, I've been feeling really led to be of service to others because, for many years, friends and close family have been coming to me kind of with their problems anyway. And for the longest time, I had the kind of thought, I have all these problems. Why is that to me? But I guess because it didn't completely take me down, I still had a lot of the victim feelings, And anyway, but to get quicker to my question, my husband and I, we've been together for almost 10 years. And he, has had a lot of situations in his past, too, that has created kind of, the victimization in him, too. So in the beginning, we identified with each other on that level. Well, I'm not so much identifying with him in that way anymore. Mm-hmm. And, it's kind of put a lot of space between us since I've been going through all these changes. Mm-hmm. So, I'm kind of wondering what might happen with us in the future. I'm just, we've just been growing further and further apart. And I don't see where I'm wanting my life to go to be any different. And I'm not sure, he's ready for me to keep having that change, if that makes any sense. I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous.
No, that's okay, Gina. Now, let me ask you this question. Are you in love with your husband?
I am. I do. I love him very much. Mm-hmm. I love him very much.
And what does that mean to you? What does it mean to love someone very much, to be in love with someone?
I want the best for him. Mm-hmm. I want him to be happy. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. That's okay.
But I want to be happy, too.
Right. Does your happiness come from being able to do what you just said, to be able to love him and have him fulfill his own destiny and be all that he can be?
Yes.
Because love doesn't have to mean that that you see eye to eye on everything, and that you're in agreement. I've often said that our soulmates are often the people who push our buttons and teach us how to be compassionate, how to love the things that don't match up to what we would like them to be.
Yes, and I understand that, and I can see how challenging me for all these years has been, a great help to the changes that I've went through. And now, I would really like to be able to help him, with some of his things, but, he's not really interested in what I had to say. So, it's hard to see him struggle with those things, knowing that he doesn't have to.
Yeah, but you know what? It's like all of this sort of happens, Gina. It happens on sort of divine time. I mean, we try to push the river. We try to make. You're moving in a direction. You're probably moving a little bit faster than he is. You're seeing things that he doesn't see. He's probably got different things on his mind altogether. And instead of just allowing that and just staying in a place of, this is who he is, this is how he feels, this is, what he does. It's not the same as I am. I'm going off in this direction. And allow yourself to go in different directions and still maintain the love. And ultimately, the decision about whether you're going to stay together or not, or whether this will end in in a happier marriage, or whether it'll end in a divorce or whatever, that's just the tricks that the mind starts playing on. It's like, I've got to get this all figured out. I have to have my whole life scheduled, and I have to know every detail of what's going to happen. Instead of that, I would just recommend that you just be in a state of grace and joy. And if he's not in the same place that you are at, honor him for where he is, and don't be in that place where there's something wrong here. We constantly tend to do this in our relationships. We're trying to find a common ground, and this is that we both agree on everything. The fact is that you probably agree on very little, and love and love is really just a willingness to love love someone regardless of what they think. But Robert Frost said it so beautifully: we love the things we love for what they are.
Well, we have two children too. I have an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old autistic son. And the past 5 years, I used to have a career, and after the economy first officially fell out, I lost my job, and so I became a homemaker because I had a young baby at that point in time, and we started having problems with him early on, and later to find out that he's autistic. So I've tried to make the best use of my time being here and not having the career and everything. So I've tried to appreciate it and make the best use I've had of it, and that's when I began all this.
Yeah.
It's been a wonderful journey.
And you've got a lot on your plate. I mean, you've got a special needs son who requires a lot of your attention. He probably, ultimately, if you could see him as probably the greatest teacher who ever came into your life.
Absolutely.
And he teaches you about being in the moment and being being in a state of grace. And these are representation of divine love.
Absolutely.
And so it's like, instead of looking at him as someone who is taking up so much of your time and keeping from being able to work the way you used to and so on, see him as this great gift that came into your life. And it's like, if you look at him and then you look at your husband and you say, well, no, I could look at him as someone who's not on the same path I'm on, and he's going in one direction, and this is going to lead to terrible things. Or you can just say, I just love him for what he is. And I don't have to be with him at every moment, and we don't have to agree on everything or even anything. And I can still be in a state of love, because divine love is really a different kind of love. It's a love that, that never changes, and it's a love that never varies, and it's a love that you have for everything and everyone. And the life inside of you, the life inside of your husband, the life inside of your son and your daughter is really just God. That's all it is. And if you can just stay in that state, just stay in that very peaceful, loving state, and turn the rest of your life and all of the details over to God, over to something greater than yourself, and just be, just be in a state of peace and joy. It's you'd be surprised how quickly it'll all work out for you.
Yes, well, with my son, when we first started having problems with him, and, I found out the whole autistic thing, I struggled with it for a very long time. Of course, didn't want to accept it and all that kind of thing. But then, I started seeing, how much he's taught me and how wonderful he is, just like you.
Absolutely, yeah. Also, become conscious of what you feed him. A lot of read Pam McDonald's diet, book, The Perfect Gene Diet.
We've already cut back on a lot of different things because of
that's very important, because we're finding out that a lot of the stuff that we're eating. I mean, if you go out into the world and look, you see that 1 out of 3 of us now are chronically obese. And then you see high increases in the number of autistic children, and you're seeing lots of changes, physical changes taking place in our human species, and a lot of it has to do with watching, the kinds of foods that we place in, the water that we drink, and things like that.
Yes, we've been working on a lot of that.
Yeah, he's a
blessing. I've been trying to work on my own self too, with my, with my weight and stuff. I've always kind of had a weight issue, but in the past 3 years, I've been able to take off 70 pounds, but it's took me 3 years to take it off.
70 pounds? That's a whole Backstreet Boy. That's what Well, good for you, my dear. I don't know if you know anything about it. You've heard me talk in the last few weeks on the Master Cleanse.
Yes, I have.
Going through and cleansing your body, getting it back into maximum health. That's what I'm working at right now. I just found out that I called my son, who's 25 years old, and he's a surfer, and he's in great shape, and he's, all these things, and I asked him what he weighs, and it turns out that I've got my weight down to, it's exactly the same as his at the age of 25. So,
awesome.
And any of it, because it all, and when I think about your call and your husband and your son and you and the obesity thing and all of that, just come from a place of I am divine love, I am perfect health, I'm a piece of God, and my body I treat it as a temple, my son's body is a temple, my husband's body is a temple, and all I'm going to do is just be in a state of love, and just try that, it works.
I will.
Let me send you. We got to go. I got to get to another call. I want to send you a copy of Experiencing the Miraculous. It's four films in Assisi and Lourdes and Medjugorje. You're going to love this. I promise you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dyer. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you, sweetheart. God bless you. It's all perfect, dear. It's all perfect.
Thank you.
Namaste.
And we probably have time for one more. We can grab Ellen in New York, and she's been very patient on line 5. We've got about 2 minutes. So we can grab Ellen really quick.
Ellen.
Thanks for your patience.
Dr. Dyer. So quickly, I just wanted to ask you then about the forgiveness the forgiveness work and what you did with your father. And I'm completing my training to be a body-centered psychotherapist. So we work with the body. And so what I'm, sometimes I've done all the spiritual work, and family can still trigger you, and I find myself acting in ways that surprise me, and forgiveness especially, it can really be held in the body. You can feel these emotions, and I think I just wanted to hear from you about that work. Sometimes it sounds like you just did it effortlessly with your father, and if you could just speak a little bit about that, bringing forgiveness into the body, because it's so important.
Right. I didn't do it effortlessly, but you know what, Ellen? The truth of it is, I don't really believe I did it at all. I'm writing about this right now in this book that's going to be out in probably another year or two. It's called I Can See Clearly Now, as I'm going back, looking at all of the things that transpired in my life from the time that I was a young boy living in foster homes up until right now, and all the different people and the teachings that have come into my life. And I really think that I was just being guided. And I think we're all being guided. We just don't listen to that guidance. The old line that's like, when the student is ready, the teachers will appear. The teachers are always there. The teaching is always there. It's whether or not we take a hold of it and grab it and use it. And I really think that I was directed to my father's grave in 1974 because I had a dharma. I had something that I came here to do. But I was aware that I had to do this. This wasn't even a choice for me, that I was going to become a teacher of higher consciousness. And so I was directed to do that. Get quiet, listen, be in peace, and you'll be guided to forgive and to love. Gotta go. I'm sorry. Call back next week. I'd love to talk to you more. See if we can get her on next week.
To watch another amazing Wayne Dyer radio show, check the video right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
We used to talk about Bob Hope. Remember the Bob Hope? He used to get a massage every single day, and he lived to be 100. So I guess
he was onto something, maybe.
maybe, I don't know, but it moves the chi around, certainly, and it's